Greetings ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Library of the Unwritten. I am the Archiver. Back with today's stories. Today's series is the second part of What If Deku Was a Descendant of the Hanma Bloodline. Before we start, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. Now let's get into it. It's been over 2 days since the trio tried to visit Izuku, but Baki intervened. He understood that Izuku might suffer anxiety by meeting the 3 people who betrayed him, seemingly in a blink of an eye. So, after those 2 days, he was finally ready. He stood near the entrance gate of the Prestigious school that is UA, known to be the best hero school there is in Japan, and presumably worldwide. Izuku chuckled a bit as he thought that UA has such a name for itself, yet it couldn't differentiate between a true hero and a traitor. Truth be told, he wasn't nervous, like those kids who go to a new school or into a different environment. The best way he could describe UA right now is enemy territory, and he was going back to it. Every single one of them just threw him out because he was suspicious, and that they finally had proof. What is this, among us? Baki did tell him what Nezu thought of him, and he was honestly astonished by his reasoning. I mean, who knew that being better than anyone else meant you're a prime suspect of being the traitor? That was just ridiculous for him. He was literally the #1 hero's successor. And so what that he dated 2 girls? My boy had to use his entire courage to ask Uraraka out. His entire face became red as a tomato for a good 30 minutes that day. And when he kissed the jar, that wasn't Izuku Midoriya doing the deed, it was Izuku Hanma. His bloodline just happened to activate at the wrong place, at the right time. He's not going back to UA because of the pitiful excuse of an apology coming from Nezu and the others, but because he still wants to become a hero. The moment everyone finds out he was innocent, or if they have already, there's definitely going to be awkward silence when he's around, or some pitiful apologies coming from their mouths. Let's get this over with, he muttered, noticing the camera was now fixated onto him. Suddenly, the entrance gate opened. To his surprise, no one was waiting for him on the other side. He brushed it off, going inside. If there is a ranking system, determined by one's strength, then the moment Izuku passed through the gates, everyone went down in the rankings. The only one unaffected was none other than All Might himself. He was still the #1, while Izuku was behind him, ranked 2nd in this school. He's been training a bit over 5 months, and that still hasn't been enough to surpass All Might, the symbol of peace. Well, if he decided to activate it, then it's a whole other story. Nevertheless, he walked inside the school. He remembered when he fangirled at every single detail of the school, showed respect to his seniors, analyzed everyone's quirks and all that, but now, he gives 0 fucks. He didn't have his books, nor his pen, nor his backpack, since they confiscated it when he was arrested when going to class. Who's that? He looks hot. One of the girls going the opposite direction of Izuku couldn't get her eyes off of him. He must be a new student, her friend stated. Well, an ex-new student. The reason they thought he's a new student wasn't because he had a face they never seen in school, it's because he didn't have his uniform. It's UA for no reason, it has some strict rules, and the uniform is the worst. Barely anyone has the balls to forget their school uniform at home, not even Bakugo, not even ones with bad memory. Before Izawa was Izuku's homeroom teacher, he taught another class. But this class didn't seem to like Izawa for some reason. So, the entire class decided to play a prank on him. It wasn't a harmful one, they all just came to class with no uniform. By the time Izawa came to class, everyone was there, with no uniform. He took a good look at everyone, eyes confused at the sight. Next thing the students knew, he was laughing profusely. Actually, that laugh made all of them like Izawa a bit more, and then realized he wasn't such a bad teacher after all. It's sad to know that was their last day at UA. Many students heard Izawa expelled an entire class, none of them knew that was the reason. So basically, wearing your school uniform is a big deal. No one is an exception to that rule. Even knowing what Izawa might do, like said earlier, he doesn't give a fuck. And actually, he doesn't care to a point where he'll try to become an exception to that rule. He knows he can, after all, UA is in a tight situation. He walked further through the school, going back to his dorm, he passed through a few teachers. Each one of them instantly batted an eye at the boy, their eyes filled with regret. So the teachers already know, then what about my classmates, he wondered. Some of the students wandering around also glared at the boy. Actually, the rest of Izuku was only known by his classmates, but at the same time, some students caught the moments when he was dragged into a car through the window. Rumors spread, and it spread faster thanks to his classmates, especially Momo and Uraraka. If they found any time to talk about it, they would talk about it. Some glared at him because he did bear a resemblance to the boy, while most did because he had no uniform on, figures. What the hell happened during those 5 months? Nezu could only wonder as the sight was astonishing. That's Izuku, no doubt about it. As Awa did say he changed, but this he could only mutter. This is on another level. He muttered again. He was watching the camera feed, he was waiting every day for Izuku to finally come. If anything, he looks like a man now. And, he also bears a resemblance to something, he just can't seem to remember it. He could see Izuku wearing his everyday hoodie, but Nezu could tell that there's a lot of muscle hidden behind it. Honestly, Nezu knows All Might would drool at the sight of Izuku, thinking of how much one for all he could handle. The sight of the new Izuku was scary for him. What's even more scary was he realized Izuku was going to the direction of his office. Nezu himself was also trying to mentally prepare for the day Izuku comes. But even he felt nervous, anxious, when he realized he's going to him. Live up to your mistakes, Nezu, you got this. He tried to calm himself down. Going to Nezu was a mistake. Yes, the rumor spread quite fast around the school, and a lot of them knew Izuku, due to being Nichire's boyfriend. But none in the corridor who looked at him knew it was the same Izuku. Some had a feeling, but they weren't sure, but one of them had the audacity to stop Izuku in his tracks. What the hell are you doing here? Izuku heard one of the kids, clearly understanding he was referring to him. He couldn't tell who it was just by his voice. Was it because he forgot who he was? Well, in a way, he only met him a few times, that's why he forgot. After taking a look at his face, he remembered the boy quite easily, almost chuckling in fact. He's a third year, and a classmate of Nichire's. Many boys like Nichire, but this guy takes it on a whole other level. He even told Izuku to dump her a few times, that's literally the reason he remembers him. Shouldn't you be in prison? He exclaimed loud enough that he got others' attention. Never was. Izuku replied nonchalantly. I guess it's no wonder he's the only one who could tell a 100% it's Izuku. He hates his guts, and that's taking Nichire from him. Well, he's got good news for him. It's funny, when the rumor spread to him, what was the first thing he did? Comfort Nichire. Even though it barely changed anything, so newsflash, he blamed it on Izuku for making her like that. She's gotten better, but her goofy side never came back. Still, every boy likes her too much for comfort. The third year stood in his way, a face riddled with anger. If anything, Izuku knew he had intentions to harm him, but it's not like he can. Back then, they might have been equal in strength, the third year being a bit more powerful, but now he can't be considered as a rival. Although Izuku had a growth spurt, the third year was still a few inches taller than him, but Izuku looked far more well-built. The third year gripped his fists, ready to spring into action. As for Izuku, he didn't need to. He had his head slightly bent down, thinking about something. Seeing Izuku seemingly not having the courage to look him in the eyes, the third year came to a conclusion. What? You don't have the balls to look me in the eyes? That's funny. The third year chuckled. Did one of the prisoners make you his bitch or something? This time, the other students chuckled, while some just laughed. Raise your head, or are you really that scared? The third year said sarcastically. Should I? I don't see a challenger up there. His statement angered the third year even more. The ground looks more intimidating than you. And that was the line for the third year. He lashed out a punch, using his strength enhancer quirk to unleash maximum damage. The third year is definitely strong for his age, and adding his quirk to the mix, it was enough to kill a man if hit directly. But that doesn't matter for him, nor should it matter to others that he killed Izuku, or hospitalized him. After all, he's a traitor, he bets most would praise him for killing Izuku. They connected, a loud thud was heard all around the corridor they were in. It was loud, and the sound of the collision sounded like it would literally break bones. But it didn't break any bones, nor it collided with Izuku. He stopped the punch, with one hand in fact. He grabbed the fist, stopping its momentum entirely. The third year was definitely surprised, but not astonished by the feat for some reason. He wanted back off, but the grip on his hand was too tight that he couldn't get his hand out of it. So, he clocked another one, aiming right at his face. That's enough. Someone saved the third year's life. Everyone turned their heads from where the voice came from, and were astonished who it was. It was Nezu. The school principal came by and saved the third year's life, but it's not like the other students knew it. He saw the third year confront Izuku on the camera. At first, he paid no mind to it, but something occurred. The look Izuku had in his eyes brought fear to Nezu, but at the same time, a feeling of familiarity came to him. He had no clue why, but he understood that if he doesn't interrupt the fight, someone's going to die. So being the little midget that he is, he ran from his office to where Izuku was. Principal Nezu. You may not believe it, but he's Izuku. The third year stated loudly. In a way, this was his backup plan, to expose Izuku. The third year understood that barely anyone recognizes him to be the little Izuku who was sent into prison. So, with that little information, all of the students nearby gasped in shock, realizing the traitor was back. They pictured the old Izuku and tried matching it with the new one, and they couldn't believe it was actually him. I already know. Nezu replied, tired from running. What? The third year exclaimed in shock. As all of you probably heard the rumor that Izuku Midoriya was found to be the traitor and was sent to prison. He stated to the students nearby. Yes, the rumor was true, but we were wrong, he's not the traitor. The eyes of the third year widened, realizing he just attacked a falsely accused student, and frighteningly enough, next to Nezu. I'm so sorry Principal Nezu. It was my mistake. The third year pleaded, hoping he would not get punished by his actions. Come with me Izuku, said Nezu. Honestly, the reason he had his head down was because he was thinking. It didn't take long, but he finally pieced it together why the third year was attacking him. You attacked me because you were furious I'm back, because I would take Nijire, right? The tone didn't make it seem as a question, but more like an answer he already figured out. We broke up, so good news for you. Now you might have a chance getting her. He tapped his shoulder with his hand for him to understand the message. But next time you say something like, you'll be dead before you know it. Izuku stated, then walking away with Nezu. He heard sounds of grunting coming from the third year. Was it grunting of anger? But why would he be mad? Izuku gave him the news he wanted to her all this time. Or was it maybe because the third year understood that Izuku stated he's stronger than him? Possibly. What the hell, the third year grunted, feeling a large amount of pain. He dislocated my shoulder. He couldn't believe it, that measly tap on the shoulder was enough to dislocate it. Obviously, the first thing he did was go to Chiyo, the school nurse, to help relocate it. 5 months ago, before Izuku was sent to prison, he had heard from the others that Izuku was exceptionally strong for his age. Of course, he had doubts, because of the jealous fuck that he is. Salty for not having Nijire. Well, he experienced his strength, but this was on a whole other level. You'll be dead before you know it. The tone made it clear he wasn't joking about it. Finally having the thought engraved into his head to never mess with him ever again. But still, he was happy to know he and Nijire broke up, that's the only good thing he heard today. Sadly for the third year, this is an Izuku x Nijire fanfic. After an encounter with the third-year-old who's obsessed with Nijire, a fight was about to break out. Thanks to Nezu, he intervened. It was lucky that Nezu came in time. We know who would have won, or even worse, who would have survived. Both would have been punished harshly if they had fought, but taking account Izuku's situation, he would have been scot-free from the punishment. If Izuku had killed the third year, then it would have been another story. During those 5 months of training, Izuku's mindset changed, becoming similar to Baki's. As of now, he doesn't fight to win, but to survive. Izuku had the heart of a true hero, but now he has the heart of a pure fighter. Granted, he still wants to be a hero, but he's going to do it his own way now. Leaving the students in awe, dumbstruck in fact that the green Ed is actually Izuku, stated by Nezu himself, they immediately went to tell their friends. Just like that, the news about Izuku is about to be known by everyone. Walking through the corridor with Nezu in front, it was dead silence coming from them. All that could be heard were the other students rambling as school is soon to start. Nezu wanted to say something, to ease the tension between them, but he didn't have the courage to even talk to him. It was no surprise there, he would have ruined his entire life if it wasn't for Baki coming to the rescue. They reached Nezu's office, it wasn't that far away from where the fight almost took place. Izuku calmly sat down on the guest's chair, while Nezu, still tense, sat down like a scared kid who got called to the principal's office. Well, it's got that you're back, said Nezu, still tense as a rock. He wanted to start with some small talk, but Izuku didn't. Save your chit-chat for later, exclaimed Izuku. Tell me what you need to say and I'll be on my way. Alright, Nezu took his hint. You're still in class 1A, your dorm is still the same, said by the principal. And what about my stuff? Izuku asked with a hint of anger. We got rid of it all, Nezu replied. Fucking figures, Izuku replied, gazing straight into Nezu's eyes. There's also going to be a new student in a few days, Nezu added, a bit intimidated. Summer is not that far away, so is the end of the school year. For UA to accept a student at such a time isn't something that's common, or even rare, it's something that never happens. Izuku knows there's a story behind it. You just don't accept a student at the last month of school, especially UA. Whatever, Izuku replied. He wants to know more, but he thinks it's best to ask the new student himself when he comes. I just want to know if I start today or tomorrow. Izuku looked at the clock, seeing there's 15 minutes left till classes start. It's up to you, said Nezu, noticing Izuku a bit and thought about something. I'll start tomorrow, but I have to do something first, he said. What would that be? Asked the curious Nezu. All Izuku could do was smile at Nezu's question. And that smile, albeit innocent, but pure with happiness and anticipation, it looked menacing in Nezu's eyes. I'm going to meet my classmates. Quirk to All Might. The last 2 days haven't been easy. Today is even worse for some reason, to which he can't explain. It just feels different, and he can't put his finger on it. After getting one for all back, the previous users barraged him with questions in his sleep like there's no tomorrow. He told them this story, he told them everything. But 2 days ago, the story changed drastically. At first, he was reluctant to tell them the true story, due to, well, he knew how they would react. Being All Might, the symbol of peace, he knew he had to. So he manned up, built up the courage and told them everything to the last detail. Boy, was it a mistake. Although most of the previous users never had kids, the guild shamed All Might as if he hurt one of their kids. With words, of course. Although to most, All Might was the world's greatest hero, to the previous one for all users, he was their greatest failure. The kid was different. The moment the previous one for all users felt the power transfer to a new host, the new successor felt different. The kid was special, even compared to the predecessors. And the kid had a mystery to them as well. The moment they felt the new successor was special, they wanted to give him time before they made contact. When it seemed it has been long enough, they tried, but never could. They couldn't make contact with him, no matter how hard they tried. It's as if something was blocking it. At first, they thought it was the boy's quirk, since it seemed the only plausible explanation. Truth be told, it was the Hanma blood. But it's not like one of them knew that. Actually, only a few people knew. As of now, All Might never had a good night's rest. The previous users never gave him time to rest. The things he said to the boy, the quirk he stole from him, and combined with what everyone had done to him, that's literally how to make a villain 101 material right there. In a way, UA has produced some villains. The entire class Izawa had expelled, one of the boys turned to villainy, but was quickly caught. If it wasn't for Baki, Izuku might have been yet another villain created by UA. But this one might have been a worst-case scenario, a villain with Hanma blood running through his veins. He was venturing through one of the school corridors with no meaning, as he doesn't have a first lecture to teach, so he has free time. As always, the students were in amaze just by the sight of All Might, even though he is one of their teachers. Even when all of them were radiating simp energy, All Might was completely oblivious to it. He was too deep in thought to notice anyone. Yo All Might. A sudden cheerful greeting brought All Might back from his trance. Taking his gaze off the ground, he saw Mirio and Tamaki coming towards him. He heard when Izuku was blamed for cheating, these two helped him out. So, he knows they were good friends with Izuku, and Ijira was much more than a friend. What's with that grumpy look? You look like you only slept for 3 hours, said Mirio, trying to cheer All Might up. 2 hours, actually. All Might replied. Well, now you know how Izawa feels every day. All Might couldn't help but chuckle a bit. Anyway, is something bothering you? I've never seen you like this, said Mirio, a bit worryingly. They were Izuku's good friends, so they deserved to know. It's sad really, even they believed that brutal lie. It took some time for Mirio and Tamaki to get over the bravado. All Might noticed it affected them quite harshly. As for Nijire, it took her the longest, and after she did get over it, she lost that goofy side of hers. For the two boys, Nijire's goofy side was the most intriguing part about her. Seeing her without it just felt like a whole different person. But she was still the same Nijire they know, so they still treat her the same as before. All Might? Mirio asked, seeing his face filled with distress. Heck, even Tamaki knew something is wrong here. All Might's never like this. It's about young Midoriya. He finally spoke up. Just like that, just the mention of his name drastically changed the two boys. Their faces going from happy to a bit worried for All Might, and now, faces filled with disgust and anger. Just the mention of his name made them feel disgusted to the brim. All Might quickly noticed the change in the two students. No one trusted Izuku, not even his best friends, his girlfriend, and even him. Quirks that change one's appearance to another is very rare, but they do exist. No one thought about this possibility, even Nezu needed 5 months to finally crack it, but even he had help from an anonymous person. What about him? Mirio asked, his voice brimmed with anger. They wouldn't take the news well. All Might understands that very clearly. He's been proven innocent. Quick to our boy. As he stood outside a certain dorm, he couldn't do anything to control the anticipation he has in his eyes. He stood outside of his old dorm, or as a matter of fact, his new dorm. Walking through the school to the dorm, he didn't even meet any of his old classmates. Granted, they all could be in class, but the sudden incoherent rambling he's been hearing since he came by, he knows everyone's inside. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't recognize me, he thought. Honestly, he wouldn't be surprised if they even forgot his name. He ventured inside the dorm, quietly closing the door to not startle them. Even as 5 months passed, he still remembers the layout of the living room. Just behind the small wall to his left, there's the sofa, where everyone hangs out either after school or before school. All he's hearing is now giggling, laughing, and rambling. In simple terms, they're having fun, even though school starts in like 10 minutes. He peeked through the wall, to not get noticed by anyone, and noticed everyone in the room. They haven't changed, not one bit. Feels like I'm the only one who matured. He thought, then noticing Bakugo, drinking beer, with that smug look as always. Trying to act as the cool guy of the class, just as he remembered. And of course, Uraraka, the fucking cheater, sat quite close to Bakugo. If anything, Izuku knew what it meant, the pieces of garbage are now dating. Their innocent smiles, giggles and chuckles, acting like nothing inhumane ever happened in this class. Izawa also said we're having a new student in our class in a few days, said Sayu. Yeah, I bet it's a female, Kirishima excitingly said. And I bet it's a boy, said Kaminari. Doesn't matter if it's a he or she, the first thing we'll do is tell her is about that traitor, am I right? Said the despicable Momo. And they bursted in laughter. Even wheezing, in fact. All they did was nod their heads as they laughed and laughed. Well, they haven't forgotten him, that's for sure. Always knew that garbage was hiding something. Writing our quirks in his journals and all that, I bet he was trying to find our weaknesses, says the garbage. Yet again, he got a chuckle out of everyone. It was time. Izuku found it to be the best time to reveal himself to his classmates, with a little twist. Man, is it me, or the class is more livelier than ever? Said Izuku, imitating his old voice. His voice got a bit deeper during those 5 months, and he spoke with his old Deku voice just now, to get a reaction from them. And boy it did. Their rambling quickly stopped as Izuku showed his presence. Even the heartless fucks that they are, they know that voice from anywhere. It even had the same tone, which was the trigger to their reaction. They quickly turned their heads, out of fear and anger. What they all could barely say anything. There Izuku stood with all his glory, a smile on his face as he was anticipating this all the while. He waited for them to say something, but all they did was just stand there, on guard for their lives. What? Cat got your tongue? Izu said in a sarcastic tone, still imitating his old voice. What the hell are you doing here? Shouldn't you be locked up in prison? Said the despicable Momo. Never was. He replied nonchalantly. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Momo ranted. Just as it sounded, thud. Although all of them were confused to the max, Lita took action. Albeit he was a good friend 5 months ago, Lita didn't hold back, quickly running up to Izuku and kicking him in the jaw with full force. Although Izuku saw this coming a mile away, he didn't dodge. He remembers that Lita's kicks hurt badly, so he wanted to test how much stronger he became. It hurt him, badly. Lita couldn't feel his foot anymore, having to pretty much stand straight with one leg. As for Izuku, there was no blood, only a minor bruise on the chin. He finally realized the difference between him and himself 5 months ago. Really? Out of everyone, you attacked me first? He questioned. I thought that would be Bakugo, but guess he's the second to attack. He wasn't lying, Bakugo was now out for his head for some reason. He threw the beer can down and used his quirk to run up to Izuku. It was weird, Bakugo had a different kind of reaction, a different kind of reason of attacking him. Izuku saw it in those mere moments right before Bakugo collides with him. Unlike the others, who were in disbelief that he's back, Bakugo was in denial. And the reason he was in denial made Izuku chuckle internally. Bakugo was taller, muscular, and even viewed himself as more handsome than Izuku. The new Izuku, in fact, now beats him in every category. As of now, Izuku is 3 to 4 inches taller, is packing more muscle than he ever will, and looks by far more cooler and sexier than him. He just couldn't believe it, he couldn't accept it. The same boy he bullied every day for years is now on another level than him. Bakugo was right near Izuku, he extended his hand, trying to grab his face, and use his explosion quirk to mess him up. He was the same as before, predictable. Honestly, Izuku didn't even need to try to put him in his place. Bakugo's hand was literally inches away from Izuku's face, yet he missed, to his surprise. Izuku just swiftly moved aside, before placing his hand on Bakugo's face gently, and added a little push. That was enough for Bakugo to fall into the void, yet completely oblivious as to what happened. He fell on Izuku's body, before catching him, and shoving him on the ground. Attack me again, Lita, and I'll show you what a real kick is. He threatened, completely ignoring the lifeless body on the ground. What the hell did you do to my boyfriend? Uraraka spoke up. I just gave him an ego check, Izuku said. After all, he needs to learn that he's not the strongest in class anymore. In the same time, he showed them an innocent smile. What the fuck are you talking about? Your rocket just couldn't stop. It's easy actually, he said. He's been proven innocent. Aizawa finished his sentence. Yeah, that. The news have finally been delivered to the class, and by their very own homeroom teacher. What? The entire class questioned in unison. But that can't be, said the despicable Momo, still doubting Aizawa's statement. Yes it can, Aizawa replied. No, it can't. He attacked Bakugo. Uraraka, shut the fuck up. Bitch, that was self-defense. Izuku fired back. But Sir Aizawa, I don't get it. That was clearly Izuku in the video. Lita made a valid point. That was Himiko Toga. Aizawa replied. That's just speculation, right? Unless she says it herself, I won't believe it. Momo spoke up. Same here, that was definitely him in the video, said some of the boys. She confessed to. Aizawa blankly, but angrily replied. It's sad, even with Aizawa telling them the truth, they still dismiss it as a hoax. Heck, Aizawa even told them that Himiko confessed, but they still have doubts. Is it because they can't believe it? Or did the author purposely plan this? Who knows? I'm sorry about everything, Izuku, I hope you can forgive me. Aizawa apologized. A simple apology isn't going to do much, you know. Izuku didn't even take it to account. He got what he wanted, so it's time to leave. I'll start tomorrow, he said, before passing Aizawa and leaving the dorm. The others rambled as I passed them in the corridors. He thought. So they know my story. And I bet Nijire found out as well. Whatever. Luckily, the dorms are quite close to the entrance gate, so he made it there in a jiffy. Standing right next to the gate, he looked back at Yue. That's funny. My dream was enroll to Yue and become a hero. Now, I'm just doing it for fun. With words of comfort coming from the Hanma, he left. Quick to Nijire. Having gone to class not that long ago, all she did was look through the window. She's gonna do that as well when the class starts, it's boring. It's been a long draining 5 months, but now, she's gotten even better. Her goofy side was coming back, as now she was holding a pencil under her nose and lips, getting a few stares from the boys. But she didn't know, her eyes were glued through the window, to the entrance gate. After the dorms became a thing, the gate has always been closed, and only is open when classes have ended. Something must have happened, she uttered quietly. Besides her beauty and talent, she also had insanely good eyesight. Unlike the author. Even from this distance, she can still see the gate clearly. She did this out of pure boredom. Who knew? That just one look at a guy would diminish that boredom, and would be replaced by pure goddamn disbelief. Izuku. He's been proven innocent finally, All Might blurted the truth out to Izuku's old friends, Mirio and Tamaki. At first, they thought they heard it incorrectly, as the words were still ringing in their ears. It's something they never expected to hear. Since after all, if what they heard is true, then they messed up big time. They finally understood what he said. They thought he was joking, but the straight face All Might had, imbued with guilt, they knew it was no joke. No way, uttered Mirio in disbelief. We're also expecting him to come back to Yue, but we're unsure when, All Might exclaimed. They were fucking morons, the guilt hit them right in the stomach. They believed his story about Uraraka rather than his classmates, but not this. Obviously they were sad, full with guilt. The emotional pain Izuku must have felt, they couldn't even imagine it. But that wasn't the worst part about it. Yes, the two boys felt like pieces of shit for believing the lie, but most of their worry was for Nijire. 5 months ago, when Nijire heard the news about Izuku being the traitor, she broke down. It took her a while before she started getting better, but she did. Although that goofy side of hers didn't come back, she was still Nijire. So the question lies, what will happen to her once she hears the truth? They reckon she's not going to take it well. They're scared just by wondering what's going to happen. Do you think he's changed? After being 5 months in prison, Mirio asked with the tone of a scared person. I haven't met him yet, but it's certain he's changed. All Might replied. By what his brother told us, a simple apology isn't going to change anything, he added. They're not surprised by that part, literally everyone in this school is an enemy to him, and it pains the two boys to think that Nijire is one as well. And they're frightened of when the day comes, the day he comes back to Yue unknown to them, he's already here. They know no one is an exception. It doesn't matter what you were to Izuku, even when he was the innocent little sweetheart, the two boys doubt he would ever forgive them. But Mirio hopes to God that Nijire will be an exception. It doesn't matter if his friendship with Izuku never recovers, he hopes that Izuku will forgive Nijire. He's really back. In their midst of their grief thinking, a UA student walked past them, saying something quite peculiar. Yeah, I saw him. Never knew Izuku was that hot. Her friend said it quite loud. Hearing her mutter his name, All Might's and two UA students' eyes widened in shock. All Might told them he might come back someday, but none of them expected it to be today. Excuse me. All Might grabbed the student's shoulder. Is it true what you said Izuku is back, he asked, hoping she was joking. You are? Why yeah. Unknown to All Might, she's a big fan of him. Where did you see him? He asked once again. I saw him on the first floor. She replied, a bit nervous. Without saying a thank you, he ran down to the first floor, in hopes of finding him. He can't use his quirk here, since he might damage the property. As for the two students, they ran to the complete opposite direction, to the third floor. They hope to God Nijira is still clueless to the situation. Reaching the third floor and their class, they were frightened of the sight. Nijira was at her desk, eyes on the verge of tears. We're too late. Both Mirio and Tamaki thought. They ran up to her, hoping she was okay. At a closer look, she wasn't, no surprise there. Nijira? Mirio asked. I think I'm hallucinating, she said quite weakly. Either that or Izuku was really at the entrance gate. Her voice was full of fear of what is really true. This confirmed she saw him, which was bad should they tell her. Nijira, every fiber, every cell of Mirio's body wanted to shut up and say it was a simple hallucination, but he knew he can't. She has to know, she has the right to know. You weren't hallucinating, he said, to which Nijira lifted her head, eyes full of disbelief. He was proven innocent and he's going back to UA, he finally said the truth. Did you even love me? Nijira, visiting Izuku in prison, asked a very controversial question. I do. Izuku replied. But did you love me? To move on with her life, she dismissed his statement as a lie. That's one of the reasons she was capable of moving on. It was one of the hardest decisions in her life. The absolute grief, guilt that overcame her just now was overwhelming. She couldn't believe it. All this time, his feelings were the same as hers. And yet, she thought he was using her as a means to throw suspicions away of being a traitor. Everything they went through, she started to remember all of it. Every time they messaged each other, their very first kiss, even the day they almost did it, but Izuku was too pure back then to catch her hints. It was too overwhelming to realize everything was in fact true. With all those memories coming back to her head, she fainted. Nijira. Both of the boys screamed in worry. Was it the right thing to do? To say the truth about Izuku? By the looks of it, it might be no. But did she deserve to know? Absolutely. Back to Izuku. Having just left UA's territory, he decided to go home. Granted, he could reach the mountain in less than a minute, but he's in no hurry. He was excited for tomorrow. Mainly due because of his class, and to see how will Bakugo react to the new him once again. Will he lash at Izuku once again, or will he realize there's no chance he'll win? Probably none of them. He knows Bakugo since childhood. The only thing he would probably do is call him names, say he'd beat him in a fight, but will completely become silent once Izuku confronts him. Some might ask, is he not worried if he meets Nijira tomorrow? Or All Might? Why would he be worried? Just because one was his loving girlfriend and the other a father figure, that doesn't mean they'll get special treatment from Izuku. Young Midoriya, a shout from a distance was heard. Speak of the devil. There's only one person who ever calls him that. Nevertheless, he sighed, out of frustration and anger. He turned around swiftly to face All Might, who was a good 10 feet away. Back then, even when he was trained by All Might almost every day for 9 months, he was still excited of seeing him every day. Just hearing his voice once always made his day livelier. Now, he feels none of that. All Might was one of the two main reasons he turned into a Hanma, the other being Nijira. Even after his classmates called him a traitor, he wanted for All Might to believe he's innocent. He had to believe he's innocent, but he didn't. Heck, even All Might noticed something was different. Izuku didn't have those eyes as before. Every time he met the youngster, he always had those excited eyes, like a hardcore fan meeting the one they adore. Now, all he saw was unamusement in those green eyes. Still, that wasn't the surprising part. He heard prior that Izuku had changed, but this was way above what he expected. Although he had a hoodie in, he could clearly see the outlines of his muscles, as the hoodie was barely fitting him. You're telling me he changed that much in only 5 months? He thought in utter disbelief. What the hell did he go through? For a moment, he forgot that what Izuku had to go through was entirely his fault. The guilt and amazement kept his mouth shut, although he wanted to say something. He shook his head, trying to focus on why he came here. Can we talk? In private? All Might asked. No? Izuku turned around and walked away. This caught All Might off guard. Surely he knows what Izuku had to go through because of everyone, including himself, but he thought he'd give him a chance to sort things out. A straight denial like that wasn't something he expected. The Izuku he knows would never do that. Granted, the old Izuku would never do that. Wait, please. He caught up to Izuku. What? He asked uninterested, angry that All Might is blocking his way. Even when Izuku's brother told him he wouldn't be taking his quirk back, All Might completely disregarded the statement as false. I mean, who wouldn't take it? With One for All, you can become a top hero easily, the number one if you put in the effort. Everyone would go crazy if they had a chance like this, there wouldn't be doubt in anyone's mind of not taking it. But sadly, only one person at a time gets a chance like this, and only the ones who have the heart of a true hero, just like Izuku. He's certain Izuku would take it back, after all, he's quirkless now. And if a quirkless person gets a taste of One for All, they'd be happy to get another try. If he decided to come back to UA, then that means he decided to become my successor again. All Might thought in pure bliss. All Might put his hands on his shoulders, which ticked Izuku off. There wasn't a doubt in his mind that Izuku would deny his power, after all, he deserves it. I want you to be my successor again, he said, with a look of ecstasy on All Might's face. There was a brief silence, while All Might was overfilled with joy, as if he already knew Izuku would accept his power. On the other hand, the boy just looked at All Might, with a face of no interest of what he said. He had a taste of One for All, I'm certain he wants it back. Izuku spoke up. That's what you're thinking, right? He said, confusing All Might. I was less than an inch away from turning to villainy. If it wasn't for the warden giving me special treatment and my brother coming to my rescue, I'd already be a villain. Izuku lashed out. And that's your excuse of saying sorry? By trying to give me something I don't want anymore? He asked. You're pathetic, All Might. You need to accept the fact you made a mistake. Izuku said. A mistake you can't fix. He added. Izuku said enough to get the point out. All Might let his hands go from Izuku's shoulders, now understanding quite a bit more. All Might's not an idiot. Well, he is an idiot. He really thought giving something back to him is a good enough apology. So, Izuku walked away, leaving All Might in a trance of thought. He couldn't care less, All Might brought it to himself. He hates everyone's guts, but he also has to thank them for one thing. If just one of them believed he was innocent, he probably wouldn't have become a Hanma. Next day. Having just woken up, at 7 in the morning, Izuku did his peculiar routine before going down to eat with his brother. Right after waking up, his mind was fixated onto one person, his father. He doesn't know much about him, other than the fact he's called the world's strongest creature. And finding out how strong a Hanma can become, it's no surprise for him. Having just left his room and going straight to the kitchen, he saw Baki already finished preparing the food. Hope you're hungry, cause I made extra, said Baki, before sitting down and munching down the food. Actually, I'm starving, Izuku exclaimed, before doing the same thing. The food was good, great in fact. Baki never ceases to amaze Izuku with his cooking. Actually, Izuku was enjoying the food a little too much. When eating, most of the times they stay quiet. After all, nothing interrupts their breakfast and gets away with it. He's going to leave for school right after he eats, so he needed to ask Baki more info about his father. Hey, I gotta ask. Izuku spoke up. What is it? Baki asked. What's our father like? Right after Izuku asked, the calming aura between Baki diminished. Was it a question he shouldn't have asked? Just by his reaction alone, Izuku could tell Baki didn't expect such a question right out of the blue. Yet, Baki's calm demeanor was still there. He's the devil. Baki simply replied, going back to eating. Yes, Izuku wanted to ask more, but something told him this is enough. If someone calls his father a devil, it's best not to ask any more info about the man. He decided to leave it for another day. Having just finished eating, he decided it's time to go to school. He literally had no backpack and no books, but it's not like it matters. What mattered for him is how Nijire's going to take this. He's certain she already heard the news, since they always spread fast in UA. He met her, to say, when Izuku saved a girl from some thugs. And she was doing well from what he could tell. Not the best, but she looked well. If anything, he knew what it could mean. It's a simple answer, and Izuku already knows that answer. She moved on. He couldn't blame her the slightest for moving on, but the fact she betrayed him, it's another story entirely. After all, he's the same, he moved on as well, and became even stronger than the top heroes, except for All Might. Most only dream of surpassing All Might, and most can't even fathom of someone being stronger than him. Heck, even ones blessed with strong quirks, they can't see themselves ever surpassing the man. After all, he's the symbol of peace for a reason. And it's a shame really, most think All Might is the strongest on this planet. Those who think that, are a clear definition of a frog in a well. As for Izuku, he doesn't see All Might as an obstacle to surpass anymore. With time, he knows he'll pass him easily. Some time back. Nijire. Both Mirio and Tamaki warningly screamed her name, as she fell down from her chair. Mirio already knew it was a bad idea to tell her, but even so, he had to. He still felt deep regret as he picked her up before running to the nurse's office. Her body and mind couldn't take it. All this time, she believed he was using her as a means to be less suspicious. For it to be false, and everything they did together to be true, she just couldn't handle it. Her body decided it's best to just shut down completely, to try and ignore everything she heard. But she couldn't. She heard it loud and clear before she fell into the void. Although not awake, she still, somehow, shed tears while lying on one of the beds in the nurse's office. It affected her a lot, the fact that Mario and Tamaki visited her almost every hour to see if she had woken up. Even till the night, she showed no signs of waking up, so her two friends tried to leave it for another day. So, somewhere around 6, Nijira finally woke up from that deep sleep. She jolted herself up from the bed, as she had no idea where she was. Trying to assess the surroundings, she relaxed once she realized it was UA's nurse's office. Still, after she relaxed, a few moments later, everything came back to her. She gripped the sheets weakly, before pulling it to her face. The moment everything came back to her head, she let the tears out. But did you love me? She once again remembered what Izuku had told her in prison. Izuku loved her, and now she painstakingly understood that. You'd think that dating Izuku for some time, you'd know more about him. And maybe more than enough to have realized it wasn't him in the video in the first place. She cried even more, realizing what an idiot she was all this time. She moved on, over a fucking lie that was caused by a video. Izuku, she gripped the sheets even harder, and her eyes getting even more watery. I'm sorry. Back to Izuku. A little bit of walking, and a little bit of girls staring, he came to UA, again. This time, the entrance gate was opened, presumably just for him, as usually it's always closed and opens after classes end. He ventured inside, again. Classes start in less than 5 minutes, so almost everyone was already in their classrooms. He walked through the corridors, reaching class 1A. It's been quite a while since he saw his classroom. Having a bit of enhanced hearing, he could hear everyone was already inside. Here goes nothing. Izuku uttered under his breath, before opening the door. The moment it opened, everyone turned their gazes to the door. As everyone was already in class, they thought it would be Izawa. Just like last night, their faces began to fill with disbelief seeing him again. What the hell are you doing here? Uraka stood up from her seat. I thought you'd have realized by now, or at least Izawa would have told you. He replied nonchalantly. Just as it seems, I'm going to class. It's actually funny to him, seeing all of their faces. He already knew it was Toga who impersonated him, but never expected to hear that she confessed to the crime. The fact that Momo said she'd only believe it to be true if Toga herself said she was the one in the video, and also the fact that Sim agreed, he still can't help but hold a chuckle inside. Izawa did tell them she confessed. So that's it, that's that, Izawa told everyone what they wanted to hear, but now they can't believe it. They're literally contradicting their own personal thoughts just because they happen to be true. What's so funny? Kaminari noticed him holding a chuckle. If you had a functional brain, you'd know what's so funny for me. Izuku replied, still trying to hold it in. I was already proven innocent, yet some of you still can't believe it. Izuku exclaimed. Or is it because some of you can't accept that you made a huge mistake? He taunted his class. The ones who now understand Izuku is innocent just sat at their seats, not trying to make eye contact with him, while the ones he taunted were angered even more. And I can tell by just looking, you all became a lot stronger. Believe it or not, it was a compliment. He doesn't know if this is a special effect of being a Hanma, but he can tell they all became stronger than 5 months ago. Yeah, stronger than you. Kaminari stated something false. Live in your own fantasy, buddy, no one cares. Izuku didn't bat an eye. He sat down on his old seat, while still getting stared by everyone. Next thing they knew, Izawa walked in, ready to teach class. He also stared at the class, and they noticed Izuku. Their eyes caught each other. While Izawa was slightly surprised, Izuku was unamused. Now that everyone's here, meet me up at the training ground. Izawa stated. What are we going to do? Kaminari asked. Sparring matches. Izawa said, before leaving the class. It brought a smile on some of the students, for God knows why. Well, Izuku was the same. He had happiness overflow him, but unlike the rest, he hid it from plain view. Truth be told, Izawa already had plans to do the sparring matches last night, but seeing Izuku, and him mentioning he'd show up for school today, he postponed it until he came. Izawa is quite curious about what he saw. The way he just disappeared from his view when caught him buying coffee, it was surreal. The speed he displayed, and the fact that the ground cracked as swell, Izawa saw it. And the fact he saw Bakugo lying on the ground next to him, well, pretty much unfazed. He wants to see how much stronger he became. They gave Izuku his PE uniform, but he has no idea how it didn't click to them that he grew taller and wider, so I guess he's going to spar while wearing jeans. The others started warning up, well Izuku didn't, it's not like he needs to. Every action he's doing, for some reason it's angering some of the students. Alright, the first ones to go are Bakugo and Iida. As always stated. To win, you either knock your opponent out, or force him to surrender. Bakugo and Iida most already know who is going to win, but they still want to watch what happens. The two walked up on the ring, which was almost the same as in the UA Sports Festival. On one side, we had Bakugo, who was oozing rage, and on the other we had Iida, who was calm and composed. No countdowns, go. As always stated. So, Iida started off with a blast, just like he attacked Izuku. He dashed to Bakugo with his engines running full force, and tried hitting him to the chin. The surprise for the readers, Bakugo saw this coming, so he sparked some explosions, pushing himself out of harm's way. AP shot! Exclaimed Bakugo, to which he fired his new move, a long-ranged explosion. It hit Iida straight to the side. Just as its name suggests, armor pierce, it broke through his costume and burned his skin. Not bad. Izuku uttered, watching it happen from the sides. Bakugo boosted himself with his quirk to Iida, who promptly tried to retaliate with another kick. The kick missed. Bakugo used this to his advantage, pushing Iida to the ground as he was off balance with one foot. To ensure he doesn't stand up, he put his hand on Iida's face, adding little harmless sparks, so he understands the message. I surrender. Iida knew he couldn't do anything else, so he accepted defeat. That was fast. Most of the students said surprised. Without a doubt, Aizawa knew everyone got a lot stronger, but he's uncertain how strong Izuku is. Fuck it. Aizawa thought. Next is Izuku against Kirishima. He stated. Everyone had mixed reactions. Some were scared, some were happy that Izuku's about to get destroyed, like Kaminari and Mineta. Kirishima got a lot stronger, even compared to others. His new move, Red Riot Unbreakable, is something else. They've tested his new ultimate move just for the fun of it, and found out that not even bullets can graze his body. Heck, even Bakugo's explosions did no damage him. Kirishima. Kill him. Kaminari said sarcastically. Yeah. Put him in his place. Even Momo joined. For Kirishima, it felt wrong. Unlike the despicable ones in the class, Kirishima doesn't want to fight Izuku, not now. When Aizawa told everyone he's innocent, he believed it, he believes it. The friend he betrayed so badly will now stand on the other side of the ring. Aizawa told them there is no countdown, so the moment they stepped into the ring, the fight began. On one side, we had Kirishima, who was a bit nervous. He doesn't want to fight him so soon, he's even thinking of surrendering. The pain everyone must have caused Izuku, Kirishima couldn't even fathom. As for Izuku, he didn't feel anything, he was just ready to fight. Kirishima hardened up, but to Izuku's eyes, it was barely anything. He was holding back quite a lot. If anything, it pissed Izuku off. Casually, he walked closer to Kirishima, not even having his arms up to defend. It's not like he needs to, his reaction time is out of this world. What are you doing? Kirishima asked, slightly confused. The same thing as you. Izuku replied, a face riddled with slight anger. Next thing Kirishima knew, he flew to the end of the ring, holding his stomach as it started burning with pain for some reason. No one watching caught as to what happened, even Aizawa. All Izuku did was punch him to the stomach, yet it was too fast to see. Luckily, Kirishima only flew back from the force, but his legs didn't give out, so he can go on. What was that? Kirishima wondered, holding his stomach. I didn't see anything. I can tell you're holding back because you're fighting me. Izuku spoke up. I don't fucking care how you feel about fighting me. If there's anything I hate equally to people who betray their friends, are those who hold back in a fight, he stated. His tone got the message to Kirishima. Don't force me to hate you more than I should. Izuku added, looking Kirishima in the eyes. Those were interesting words of encouragement. Even if they weren't actually words to encourage Kirishima, it still made it more clear him. Even if his actions hurt Izuku, to levels Kirishima couldn't even comprehend, he understands holding back isn't an option. So, you gonna take this seriously or not? He asked. I will. Kirishima replied. Kirishima finally took it seriously. To show respect for his enemy, he hardened as much as he possibly could, reaching levels of hardness comparable to hardened steel. When he uses Red Riot Unbreakable, there's always a faint sound of creaking coming from Kirishima, yet this time the sound was much more louder. It brought a smile on Izuku's face. Maybe Kirishima could give Izuku a decent fight. Red Riot UN. Izuku always hated this cliché move, announcing one's ultimate move to the enemy. Sparring with Baki on a day-to-day basis, he hasn't even once called out his move to him. The moment Kirishima hardened, Izuku attacked. Kirishima showed him that he's taking it absolutely seriously. Izuku, out of the small hint of respect he had for him, showed Kirishima what it feels when Izuku puts little effort into a punch. Just like at first, he aimed it to his stomach. Even with a body comparable to hardened steel, he couldn't take it. The moment it connected, he lost consciousness. He flew out of the ring, flying a few more meters before he fell to the ground. Everyone watching couldn't even comprehend what the hell just happened. At first, he was a few meters away from Kirishima, then the next second, he vanished, before appearing next to the red-haired boy. All of them couldn't even get a single word out of their mouths. And that's that. Kirishima hardened up, to his utmost limit, upgrading the now new Red Riot Unbreakable. As most thought Izuku lost any hopes of winning the match, he vanished from everyone's view. Next thing they knew, is that Kirishima was launched into the air, before falling down to the ground seemingly lifeless. Not one of the students, including Izawa, knew how to react. Everything ended way too fast, basically an instant. The students definitely knew Red Riot Unbreakable is, well, definitely unbreakable. Heck, even Izawa saw beforehand that it's almost impossible to break through Kirishima's guard. No matter what they thought, nothing was making any sense to the teens. This doesn't make any sense. Kaminari spoke up. He's actually scared. You've been rotting in prison for 5 months while we've been training our asses off, he screamed. All of them agreed to his statement. After all, he spoke facts, but not really. As Izuku noticed the anger they were radiating, he decided to tell them the truth. Trust me, he said, noticing their unbearable anger pointed toward him. The only one here who has the right to say that they trained their asses off is me. He pointed to himself with his thumb. Honestly, it was no use telling them. The ones who still can't accept the fact that he's back are way too deep in denial, especially Momo and Uraraka. Kaminari might also be put on this special case as well. No matter what Izuku utters, or says politely, their anger and disbelief always clouds their judgment. The only one in the room who still had a functional brain after the spectacle Izuku performed was Izawa. If anything, it now proved to him what he saw in the coffee shop wasn't some sort delusion. But still, it got Izawa asking way more questions than he has answers. Like, how did he grow to the size of him in only 5 months? Why is he so strong? Why is he getting the same odd feeling when he met his brother Baki at their home? Izuku has showed Izawa time and time again that his potential to become stronger is definitely the best in class, but this is on another level. And he saw it, a potential answer. He never saw it at first, because who the hell looks at somebody's hand intensively? Izawa barely noticed the scars all around his knuckles. There were many, too many to count for Izawa. The answer was quite easy, but Izawa wasn't so sure at first. All this time, Izuku was training intensively, if you could even call it training at this point. It was plain torture. What the hell did you go through for these past months? Izawa wondered, worried. Somebody get Kirishima to nurse's office. Izuku said. I felt his bones break. Izuku held back. Kirishima won't die from that punch, if he gets treatment of course. He watched the reactions of his classmates. He expected something like this, but it still brought him pure joy. Most would think he's a psychopath for feeling like this, but who's to blame? As he finished his match, all he had to do was wait until the others finish. Back then, he would analyze everything, either as a habit, or to get an upper hand. Now, everything was just so slow, so boring, but he had nothing else to do. As he watched Kaminari spar with Ajiro, he now realized where his cockiness came from. Not only did he become physically stronger, faster, more agile, but also learned to control his electricity quirk a lot more easily. Don't get it twisted, Izuku's measuring Kaminari's rate of improve compared to the others in class. Comparing Kaminari to Izuku, well, there's nothing to compare. If anything, Kaminari is now as strong as Izuku 5 months prior, or maybe even a bit more better, but that's all there is to it. Having watched all the matches with no excitement whatsoever, classes started once again. During those classes, he realized that his intelligence was also boosted. He never tried to learn anything when he was with Baki. All he did was just wake up, eat, train, 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 eat, train, train, eat once again, train, train, eat again, train, maybe eat again, train a little and go to sleep and repeat. Some of his classmates also gave him small glares. He didn't pay attention to them, not one bit. Even if the ones he didn't see, he definitely sensed them. Lunch break came, and everyone started rushing to the cafeteria. Izuku didn't want to stay in his class the entire time, so he decided to do something out of plain worry. He's going to check up on somebody. Most of his classmates already left for lunch, but some stayed. As he walked past a few, Izuku tripped. Lo and behold, Kaminari made him trip over, intentionally placing his leg out so Izuku would trip. He got him to say, but once he fell down, he caught himself with one hand, before pushing himself back up. Do that again and I'll break your leg. Izuku warned, no aggressiveness in his tone. All Kaminari did was chuckle, before smirking. His demeanor told Izuku he's going to take that chance, so he'll gladly do it if it happens again. He walked out of class, ready to go for a visit to Kirishima. Kirishima has just woken up from the unexpected beating. As almost everybody does, he jolted himself up, but quickly stopped as the pain was too high. Sadly, Chiyo, the school nurse, can't use her quirk on an unconscious person, so Kirishima is said to stay here until she heals him. This hurts, he muttered. What the hell happened? He reminisced of the fight he had a few hours ago. I couldn't even see him move. Kirishima does have a lot of confidence in his stronger form, maybe a little bit too much. He actually thought he could tank Izuku's hits like they would be nothing, but having realized that just one punch from Izuku broke his body, he blamed himself for not training enough. He looked around the room, seeing nobody else inside. Also, the other beds for the injured students were unoccupied. Maybe he's here alone, he's not sure. One of the beds to his far left has its view blocked by the curtains. Unknown to the injured student, the person on that bed is Nichire, hiding herself from everyone. Usually, most students can only stay here if they have a physical injury. Although she has no signs of that kind of an injury, Chiyo let her stay as long as she likes. Her relationship with Izuku was pretty much known by every teacher in school. So, Chiyo knew why she's like this and decided to let her stay. Her long hair, seemingly having a life of their own, positioned themselves in a peculiar manner, as if trying to comfort her. At the same time, she heard the sound of a door opening. She didn't pay mind to it, it was probably Chiyo. Izuku, Kirishima screamed. The moment she heard Kirishima utter his name, her body tensed up. How did he know she's here? It doesn't make sense to her. Maybe Mirio told him. What are you doing here? Kirishima asked, somewhat frightened. I just came to make sure I didn't kill you. He replied nonchalantly. He looked at Kirishima, seeing there's no problems. And you're fine, so take care. Izuku said, trying to leave. Wait. Kirishima exclaimed, loudly enough for Izuku to stop. What? He replied, not interested. Right after waking up and realizing what happened to him, he had questions, ones that need to be answered. How did you become so strong? Kirishima asked, somewhat politely, making Izuku raise his eyebrow as to what he meant by that. I mean, all of us have been training our asses off, and it has been showing great results, especially for me and Kaminari. He said, feeling the sense of achievement coming from Kirishima. I thought I would need to hold back when fighting you, no offense. He said quietly. But you know how that turned out. They exchanged glares, one needed answers, and one looked at an idiot. Dude, I just trained, that's all. Izuku replied. And saying you trained your ass off and actually training your ass off are two different things. He added. It's easy to tell you're the former. Izuku told him enough, so he left. Having forced Kirishima to overthink about his training schedule, or if he needs to change it, he thanked Izuku for that. It's funny, the one Kirishima and his class betrayed so harshly, is the only one who came by to check up on him. Still, Kirishima knew what to do, while Nichire didn't. She had her chance, by getting out of the curtains, but she blew it. She wanted to confront him, to stop hiding by the curtains and meet him face to face, to say sorry. But she didn't have the willpower to do it. Pathetic. Izuku uttered as he walked back to his class. She's pathetic. He uttered a bit louder, but still too faint for anyone nearby to hear. What does she think hiding is going to do? He uttered again. He sounded a bit disappointed. Nothing else interesting happened after taking a visit to Kirishima. Kaminari didn't try to trip him again, for some odd reason, given how he reacted prior. As a new day came, and a day in school, Izuku thought it would be just like any day, learning, maybe a little bit of training, and that's it. Izawa came to class, and told everyone the news. As you know, we didn't finish for what we came for when USJ was attacked, but now we have another chance. Izawa spoke to the class. Obviously, the class was delighted to hear that, as last time they didn't get to experience what they came for. The attackers of USJ were all arrested, so now we have no worries. Izawa added, so others wouldn't have any PTSD. Obviously, they didn't worry, they just wanted fun, and how gigantic USJ looked, it's definitely a place to visit. Unlike the rest, Izuku was different, he didn't find it fun. Not at all. He felt different, like something is going to happen. Does it matter? As always said, they arrested the League of Villains. Unless there's a new dog in town, there's nothing to worry. What he did care about was the new transfer student. Considering he heard his classmates say he or she should come in a few days. Now those few days passed, so where is the transfer student? He didn't ask Izawa to not look picky, and let him continue with the dialogue. The little mechanism opened where their hero suits are housed, signifying that they're going to USJ right away. There was a small problem though, Izuku's old suit doesn't fit him anymore. To add insult to injury, after he was discovered to be the traitor, they threw away his suit in the dumpster. No worries though, as UA already made him a new suit. They made it with the same design as the last one, but a bigger one, considering Izuku's new physique. How the fuck does this fit me so perfectly? He wondered. I didn't give UA my new measurements. Nezu has his ways, that's all that can be said. He brushed the thoughts of his new suit off, and followed Izawa outside. A bus was already waiting for them, they gladly hopped on and were ready to go. All Might was going to come as well, but something came up. Izawa informed his troublesome class. They all pouted. All Might rarely started teaching class 1A after Izuku was sent away. It's a shame, they really enjoy his classes. But it's weird, not to Izawa or the class, but to Izuku. Everything's going the same way as before. He understands he's overreacting, but he can't lose this wary feeling off. They all boarded the bus and left off. Considering where this is going, the viewers already know. Izuku could tell he is being treated as an outcast. Not by everyone, but most of them, as they sat quite far away from him. They were talking, Kirishima was talking about what a man should be, Jiro's listening to music, Kaminari's texting someone. Never knew he had any other friends except from the class. He thought, at the same time noticing Bakugo giving him the death glare. Still, it was a lot to take in. He reminisced of what Baki told him today during breakfast. And here I thought I found out everything. He somewhat chuckled. They reached Yusuke, to their delight. Getting out of the bus, they all headed down to the entrance. As it opened, it revealed 13, although with the suit it was hard to tell. She was definitely happy to see them, since last time with them, things happened. Aizawa, it's so good to see your class again. 13 cheered. Yeah. Aizawa died inside. They all took in the view of the territory, having the same reaction as before, thrilled of seeing it once again due to its sheer size. Aizawa's goal of coming here wasn't to see his class's strength. They all became way more powerful, most are already capable of being a sidekick, while some can already be a hero. But strength isn't everything that makes a great hero. Yusuke is a place for ones to train their actions in different environments. This is an ideal place to get experience with disaster scenarios. As Izuku looked down the insanely long staircase, to the fountain in the center, the uneasiness never left him. He stood at the edge of the staircase, something was telling him to be on guard, not for himself, but for others. Like said before, Izuku was an outcast, since the others were away from him, listening to 13's unnecessary rambling about the history of this place. Is it a new student of yours, Aizawa? 13 caught an eye on Izuku. No, that's Izuku. He replied blankly. And yeah, he's changed. Don't ask. He added, to make 13 would shut up. Aizawa understood Izuku didn't want to be near his class, due to his own reasons, but that wasn't the reason he stood that far away. Just barely, he could see his eyes are focused on something in the far distance. Not only that, his demeanor, the aura he's emitting, Aizawa sensed that he was on guard, for some unexplained reason. Izuku, what's wrong? He approached the boy. He didn't respond, in fact, he didn't even react. Something was up, and if it worries Izuku, Aizawa knows it's a problem. Look at the fountain, Izuku spoke up. So Aizawa did. No matter how much he looked, he couldn't see anything that would be out of the ordinary. I don't see anything. Aizawa replied, perplexing Izuku even more. He's the only one who could see it, a faint flicker of light at the center of the fountain. And then as quickly as it came, it stopped flickering. Aizawa, get everyone out of here. Izuku ordered. Now. Right on time, the light disappeared. And the next cliché thing to happen was a portal appearing right near the fountain. But it wasn't the only one, others started popping out as well. Everyone get out of here, Aizawa ordered loudly. We're getting attacked. They were all quite close to the exit, but it was too late, the same portals appeared as well. This didn't make sense for the students, as Aizawa said it himself that the attackers of USJ were apprehended. If they had a functional brain during such a crisis, they could easily tell this was different. The portals weren't black and purple, they were black and gray. It was a different quirk altogether. And the worst thing yet, the villains, things that came out of the portals, weren't just simple villains, but black disgusting humanoid creatures, Nomus. But it wasn't a few, not a dozen, but at least 40 fucking Nomus. Granted, none of them looked anywhere close as intimidating to the one that All Might barely defeated. Luckily they look mindless, at least they act as ones. But, Izuku could tell they were given specific orders, and by the looks of it, the order was to not let anyone escape. As most were panicking, one of the Nomus charged at the huddled-up classmate. The biggest surprise. Kaminari stepped up and electrified the booger. Come and get me, you motherfuckers. Kaminari ratted. The Nomu, who was electrified, definitely died. Kaminari, although acted as a hero, is now a complete dumbass, as his words pissed off the Nomus. Two came charging in, completely ignoring Kaminari and going for the group of classmates behind him. They're not mindless after all. The students, although frightened, were on guard on the oncoming attack. But luckily, Aizawa came in to the rescue, using his scarf to render the two Nomus useless, before throwing them down the long staircase. Why aren't the others attacking? Aizawa wondered. It was definitely a mystery. All the other Nomus just stood there, watching everyone as they blocked the exit. What's their plan? Aizawa only could wonder. Then it hit him, then Izuku, and 13. The fact that Kaminari defeated one of them with ease, and that Aizawa yeeted two of them like it's nothing, it showed the three of them a clear picture. They're weak, very weak. Them attacking could actually be a thorn in their plans. In simple terms, their sole goal is to defend the gate to not let anyone escape. They feel like idiots for not realizing it sooner. The gates at the bottom that opened, they're unchecked. Both Izuku and Aizawa took a look at what might be down the long staircase, and the horror Aizawa saw was worse than they have ever expected. Aizawa, a hero who never loses hope, might start to think otherwise. Hundreds of Nomus flooded the ground below, and were rapidly climbing the staircase. This was bad. An impossible situation to escape. Regardless, Aizawa had to think of something, but he never could. As for Izuku, things were different than one would imagine. He wasn't in distress, he wasn't losing hope. In fact, what he's feeling right now is unusual. All those Nomus below, it brought pure joy to the boy. One thing's for certain, if all of those Nomus die, there's no repercussions. Izuku was living for that. He couldn't control himself. The feeling of pure ecstasy ran through his body as he ran to the Nomus, with a menacing smile at that. Before Aizawa knew it, Izuku was closing in on the Nomus. You idiot. Turn back. He screamed, but Izuku didn't respond. Hanmas are born fighters. If we ever have a chance to either hurt or kill many individuals with no repercussions, it becomes almost impossible to control oneself. Baki, today, during breakfast, gave Izuku another tell about the Hanmas. But it's not like he cared. As of now, Izuku is all about instinct, punching and kicking every Nomu he came across with speed, strength and precision, and most importantly, the will to kill. No matter if some of the Nomus didn't even try to confront Izuku face to face, they still got punched or kicked hard enough to either break almost all the bones or die on the spot. This was inhumane, as Aizawa didn't like the sight at all. But as it pains him, it's a win-win scenario. Still, there should be at least one extremely strong Nomu, right? One either equivalent or a bit weaker than the one who almost beat the symbol of peace. But, Aizawa had to put some faith on Izuku. He's certain Izuku is stronger than him, by a lot. Izuku went further down the staircase, leaving a pile of corpses in his wake. Yes, they were dead, but only most of them. Just like the Nomu during the last attack, some of them had a regeneration quirk. But even so, such quirks are useless if they die on the spot. Only a few, either with regeneration or healing quirks, stood up and went further up the staircase. They're regenerating slowly, as Aizawa uttered. If anything, that's a relief. Their healing isn't even close to that monster who broke his hands before. Weirdly enough, the Nomus who didn't die by Izuku didn't try to go to return the favor. Still, why aren't the Nomus trying to get rid of the biggest threat? They're going for the crowd. Aizawa figured it out. If the Nomus reach the top, they'll be surrounded. So, Aizawa had to get his hands full with the leftovers Izuku didn't finish. Everyone, you have no other choice but to attack. If they surround us, it's over. Aizawa ordered. Alright. Most of them replied. Aizawa was happy, at least. His class, although scared, can still put up a fight. Aizawa descended down to finish the remaining Nomus. Truth be told, what that Nomu did to him, it's something he could never forget. Even if his enemies are only low-leveled Nomus, leagues below the one he fought prior, he was still frightened. But he had no choice, he had to protect his students, and also, to be forgiven. No matter what the enemy or villain is, Aizawa would never kill, he would break their arm at most, but that's it. Seeing Izuku, completely disregarding everything else, and just hitting every living being he sees with enough force to end any life, was a sight he did not wish to see. What happened to Izuku, you're all to blame. He remembered Baki's words. The uncontrollable lust for blood Izuku is experiencing, Aizawa could only feel like it was his fault, like it was everyone's fault. But it's not like he could do anything to stop Izuku. Who knows, maybe he would attack Aizawa as well if he got too close. As time passed on, and Izuku finally descended down the staircase, and now near the fountain, only a dozen of Nomus were left alive. And like a beast with no time to spare, the last remaining Nomus were all defeated by yours truly. Izuku breathed out harshly, and his facial expression, signifying that he wants more. But there was nothing left for him to lose his temper, so he snapped out of it. Only now, has he realized what he had done. What? he exclaimed, being in disbelief by seeing the corpses all around him. I did this? He asked, although he already knew. I'm an idiot, he said. My brother even warned me something like this can happen. He felt some guilt, since he literally killed over 100 nomes. He looked up, seeing everyone on top struggling with the other nomes. An entire class of future heroes, not to mention 2 other heroes, were having a hard time with the nomes with Atlas 3 times as less of what Izuku defeated in a matter of minutes. He had intent of go up and help, but he didn't have a chance. Another portal opened, another batch of nomes were coming. Only one portal was in sight, for as of now, the size of it was a lot bigger compared to the others. Were the real threats coming? Izuku couldn't tell. He saw someone, or something, starting to come out from the portal. As said before, the portal was bigger than the others, but the frame of that thing that came out was as big as the portal. A huge frame is always seen to be something intimidating, but that's not it. That wasn't the thing that was making Izuku feel nervous. The thing that stood over 3.5 meters tall, a black, but definitely honed body was filled with scars all over. Honestly, it reminded Izuku of himself. But something wasn't making any sense for the boy. There's Atlas 50 nomes on top, and over 150 already dead below. Sending over 200 nomes just for a simple class was a bit overkill to say the least. Granted, All Might should have been here, but he had stuff to do. What's this? The huge nomes spoke up, with fluent English in fact. All the nomes have already fallen, the thing said. All for One definitely said All Might was getting weaker, but to defeat all of them in such a short time. The thing was bewildered. Maybe he hasn't gotten weaker. It could only come up with that. It wasn't All Might. Izuku stammered out, a bit frightened, but still very much composed. The thing was so focused on looking up, as if insanely prideful, finally looked down to see the green-haired boy, his knuckles all bruised up from the punching. Boy, you did this? He asked, a bit in denial. Yeah, I did. Izuku answered. The thing chuckled, and then somewhat praised Izuku for this surprising feat of strength. I have to admit, it's impressive, he exclaimed. But, even for a hero in training, your methods are inhumane. He pointed to all the dead nomes. Yeah, I lost control, a mistake on my part, Izuku said. With all this small talk, Izuku was still heavily on guard. The aura the thing is radiating, it's nerve-wracking. Nevertheless, he's certain. This thing is definitely stronger than the Nomu during the first attack. It hasn't done anything to prove his strength, but Izuku could sense the aura. It's strong, way too strong. Another scary thing was what he mentioned. All for One. No doubt about it, Izuku knew it was related to One for All, but those questions are for another time. Also, who the hell are you? Izuku demanded the tall beast. Oh, where are my manners? He laughed it off as if there was no biggie. You can call me Hawk. He spoke of a familiar name. Or you can know me as All for One's greatest creation. It's been too long. Nijire has been resting in the nurse's office for way too long. Her friends, Mirio and Tamaki, are always visiting her every few hours, hoping to cheer her up. It was working, but not enough to make a difference. But after a little incident, it has gotten worse. Izuku visited the nurse's office, but not for her. Granted, he didn't even know Nijire was there at first, but he later sensed her. He was there for Kirishima. The way Izuku talked to him, it wasn't as if he was talking with a friend. Time was passing ever so slowly for her, being seated at her bed all the time. But, even she knew this had to stop, it had to change. I know what you, Mirio said, before changing the sentence. What we did to him, Mirio said. But you know this has to stop. He made a good point. Nothing's going to change if you don't do anything, Mirio added. Nijire told her 2 friends about the incident, about how she hid away from her ex, out of fear of what's to come. Hiding is the same as doing absolutely nothing, Mirio quoted. If you don't confront Izuku, you know what might happen, the boy added. Basically, all her confidence seems to drop when she's near Izuku, or even when she hears his voice. But with a little boost from Mirio, she started to change. You're right, she said, getting out of the bed she's been lying for so long. I'll meet him today. She stammered a bit. His words definitely sparked a fire back in her, but was it enough? Maybe I'll go meet him now, she said, with some confidence. There she is, Mirio replied. All those visits, it finally paid off. She's finally back. Wait, now? Mirio questioned, but it was too late. She stormed out of the office, in search of Izuku. The fire in her didn't care what Mirio had to say, she just left in a moment's notice. Clearly, she didn't know Izuku is having some problems in USJ. Back to USJ. After performing a little massacre, a new enemy showed up. He was different, unlike the other nomes, he was sentient, intelligent. And if Izuku's guts are correct, Hawk's fighting style might not be just all brawl. Oh, where are my manners? The thing lauded it off, as if it was no big problem. You can call me Hawk. Hawk spoke, his name having some familiarity to Izuku. Or you can know me as All for One's greatest creation. Hawk spoke, his prideful tone ever so cocky. So, All for One created these? Izuku questioned the 3-meter Nomu. Even the strong Nomu who attacked USJ before. It was definitely a question Izuku needed to ask. For starters, Izuku thought the Nomu back then was definitely not someone who was just born like that. Seeing the Nomu obey all of Shigaraki's commands without a second thought, he knew something was up. Also, seeing the Nomu regenerate, and having almost a perfect immunity to All Might's punches, he was close to cracking the puzzle. And now, he didn't need to. If one man, or woman, Izuku doesn't fucking know what gender All for One is, can create such beasts, and with such numbers, those feats are enough to induce fear even to the professionals. And what Hawk said, him being stronger than the one before, it was enough for Izuku to activate all of his instincts. He was ready for everything. You consider the Nomu who attacked this place before strong? Hawk asked, a bit perplexed. That weakling was created with the little resources All for One had. Hawk exclaimed. It wasn't perfect, not even close. Hawk didn't stop with the unnecessary information. Yes, it was a match for All Might, but that's all there was. If it had fought someone like Endeavor, the Nomu wouldn't have stood a chance. So it was only created to fight All Might? Izuku asked. Indeed. Hawk replied. Then what about you? Izuku besieged. Me? Hawk begged. I wasn't created to fight someone, I was created to fight everyone. He replied maliciously. But still, I'm clearly disappointed. Hawk responded. If you think that Nomu was tough, then I had my hopes up for nothing. Hawk stated, sombered. Ugh, whatever, let's get this over with. Hawk stated, coming ever so slowly to Izuku. I don't have all the Hawk was cut off. He had his guard down. Well, it looked like he was defenseless in that moment, and Izuku risked it. Jumping up and extending his leg, kicking Hawk straight to the chin. But even when Hawk was relaxed way more than one should be in a fight, he dodged it with little effort. Sharp, fast, and deadly. Hawk complimented. That would have killed anyone if it had hit its mark. He exclaimed once more. But still, I'm disappointed. His cocky smile dropped to pity of all things. Realizing surprise attacks aren't effective, Izuku couldn't see him winning the fight. The only one he saw that could put up a fight against this thing was All Might and his brother, but Baki doesn't count. He sharpened his senses, trying to be as serious as possible in this ordeal. But even so, Izuku barely dodged it. Hawk's punch was way too fast, even though he dodged it by a fluke, Izuku still had a bruise on his chin. Finally experiencing the differences firsthand, he had no fucking clue what to do. Oh? You dodged it? Hawk exclaimed, somewhat surprised. But don't get my hopes up, he said, rushing into Izuku. I don't want to be disappointed midway into battle. Hawk's face, riddled with ecstatic joy as he punched Izuku right to the stomach. It hurt, causing damage to the young boy as he flew back closer to the staircase. Izawa, who has now taken care of the Nomus, finally saw the monstrous beast from below. The scary thing to witness was Izuku, who was holding his stomach, clearly in pain from the devastating punch. Izawa quickly rushed down to help the boy. But the question is, what could Izawa do? The answer is simple, you dumbasses. He's going to erase the thing's quirk, or quirks. Izawa activated his quirk on Hawk, quickly erasing one of Hawk's powers. Which quirk? No clue, as Hawk's filled to the brim with all sorts of Enchancer-type quirks. I've heard about you, Eraserhead. Hawk exclaimed. A hero who can erase quirks by just glancing at someone. I'm surprised even Inomu knows who I am. Izawa almost stammered. But now experiencing firsthand on how your quirk works, you're going to be a liability if you decide to fight me with that brat. Hawk stated. What? Your quirk only erases one quirk at a time. Hawk stated facts. And me? Hawk said, with sass. I'm filled with all sorts of enchancers. He said cheekily. Although for Hawk to lose just one measly quirk isn't much, it still has an effect. Now move along and let me fight that brat. Hawk demanded. The reason he's a bit persistent on fighting Izuku is the fact the boy tanked one of his punches, not to mention straight to the stomach. Maybe he's worthwhile after all. Hawk wondered. Truth be told, the punch did have an effect Izuku, but he needs 100 more of those for him to fall. Although it's true that Izawa can only erase one quirk at a time, I can see the effect it has on you. Izuku spoke. Oh really? Hawk asked, a bit angry. Why the hell do you look so uncomfortable? Izuku smirked, finally realizing a way to win the fight. You're not used to it, getting a quirk erased from you, said Izuku. And that's going to be your downfall. Actually, Izuku was bluffing. He's still not so certain on one fact, but he decided to risk it. No matter what, keep your eyes on him, I'll defend you. Izuku said to Izawa. Also, blink at least twice a second, but also keep your eyes on him. A bit of a confusing tactic to Izawa. What? Izawa could only question. Your quirk can only race one at a time, right? Said Izuku. Even if you can only race one, how would that mechanism work on a person with multiple quirks? He asked. This is my gamble. I think the mechanism is random. He exclaimed, hoping Izawa would comply. Even if it's true, how would it even help? He said he has all sorts of engines or quirks in his system. Izawa stated, a bit loud. Erasing just one wouldn't make a difference. Truth be told, Izawa wanted to go and help the students with the Nomu problem on top, but their problem is solvable even without Izawa, but not Izuku's. Izuku knows damn well he can't win by fighting Hawk on equal terms, so he's using a peculiar plan which is only a simple gamble. It does make a difference, said Izuku. The moment you looked at him, he became uncomfortable. He's completely dependent on every quirk he has in his system. I'm guessing when you looked at him, you erased either a strength or a speed enhancer, and that made him vulnerable. Izuku stated. It was starting to make sense for Izawa. A Nomu that is all quirk and no brawl, and just erasing one quirk is enough to weaken him enough to be defeatable. And the rapid blinking, Izawa was honestly shocked how Izuku could have come up with that in such a short time. If the Nomu is dependent on every quirk he has, then once a quirk gets erased, he needs time to adapt to the new change. But even worse for Hawk, he has to adapt every half a second, which is definitely a task that seems impossible. Basically, the best way I could describe it is like changing your mouse's sensitivity. You need some time to adapt, unless you change it to something you're already familiar with. But then imagine the sensitivity changing to something random every half a second, it's gonna confuse the fuck out of you. Hawk, who stood some distance away, didn't hear anything about their plan as he doesn't have a super hearing quirk. Still, it didn't matter for him. Hawk's pride of being All for One's greatest creation was too high to even have any fear of what their plan might be, so he let them think of anything they see fit, while he was just standing there waiting for them. He already has his plan as well. Beat Izawa, then go for the boy. He doesn't see Izuku as someone who can defeat him, but someone who can entertain him, given the fact he tanked his punch. But what about you? Izawa asked. What if I accidentally look at you and erase your quirk? You're going to be completely vulnerable. He added. Don't worry about that, I'm quirkless after all. He somewhat smirked. What? Izawa was perplexed. Stop asking questions and let's do it. Izuku hyped. With all of that planning, Izuku was the one who rushed into battle. Hawk, who was basically standing there, nonchalant, wasn't expecting much. Izawa stood in the back, since there's nothing he can do to help except for his quirk. The moment Izawa got a clear look at Hawk, the same thing happened. His body changed, catching him off guard. Trying to block the oncoming punch of Izuku's, Hawk barely made it in time. But this is only the start of what he has to endure. Izawa was now rapidly blinking, and by how Hawk reacted, it proved Izuku that the mechanism was indeed random. He kicked Hawk straight to the stomach. He tried blocking it, but to Izuku, it looked like Hawk was an entirely different man in a different body. Basically, he didn't have much control. But still, Hawk tanked it, clocking his own punch to the green-haired boy. Izuku blocked it, albeit it was difficult. I have to stick with dodging, Izuku thought. In the same moment, he got another good kick in, straight to the jaw. Clearly, Hawk does not have a glass jaw, so it wasn't lethal, but it was damaging. What the hell is this? Hawk wondered, getting punched in the stomach. What's happening? Why the hell are moves so different each time? He was dumbfounded. Still, he was getting hits in, but Izuku had way more. Even so, Hawk's were more deadly. This was a first for him, getting actual pain, getting damage inflicted into his body. But Hawk wasn't the greatest creation for nothing. He caught Izuku by the neck, now making Izuku incapable of dodging anything. With pure rage, he cocked one straight to the stomach, full force, making Izuku cough off some blood. It bruised his ribs, or even broke some of them. But it seems luck was siding with Izuku. In that moment, it seemed that Izawa had erased the strongest strength enhancer Hawk had. Also, even with broken ribs, Izuku has endured something way more excruciating. Training. Using his elbow and leg to hit Hawk's wrist perfectly, he was forced to let Izuku go. Once he let go, Izuku hit his left ankle, making him almost stumble down near to Izuku's level. It was an ankle breaker, literally. This couldn't be any more perfect. As he was falling, Izuku punched Hawk straight to the face. The kinetic energy of Hawk falling added with the punch, it made the effect more deadly than it should have. Due to the author's bullshit, Hawk's pride is so big that he denied All for One's offer of giving him a healing quirk. I need to get rid of him, Hawk thought. He needed to get rid of Izawa, because for the first time Hawk sees himself losing. But it wasn't an easy task. Hawk's current ever-changing state was way too fucking confusing to understand anything, and because of that, Izuku wasn't something Hawk sees someone as prey anymore. The blows being exchanged, it was always 1 to 5, Izuku having more quantity, but Hawk's hits had more quality. Still, in the end of the spectrum, Izuku was winning. For Izawa's eyes to catch up, Izuku was always fighting Hawk head on in one spot, in hopes Izawa could see the Nomu. It was working damn well, although Izuku was also suffering quite a lot. Hawk got another good hit in, or more accurately, a kick to the chest. If the punch prior didn't break any ribs, this one definitely did. It was powerful. With the force of the kick, Izuku was almost flung back. The thing is, Hawk finally let aside his pride and started to think more rationally in his disadvantage. Hawk stepped back, and for an unexplained reason dug his hand into the cement ground below, making Izuku raise his eyebrow. Next thing he did was throw the chunk he grabbed from the ground. The distance being a few meters, a big chunk isn't going to be hard to dodge. But turns out, it was. It wasn't a big chunk. Hawk crushed the boulder into his hand, making pellets and throwing straight to Izuku. Izuku swiftly moved aside, dodging them, but barely. Next thing he saw was Hawk, smiling, as if he won. The huge amount of pellets, it was just a ruse so that Izuku couldn't figure out his actual target. It was Izawa. Hawk knew Izuku wouldn't even let him get 5 meters close to Izawa, so he improvised. Albeit it's possible for Izuku to dodge the swarm of pellets, but what about Izawa? Hawk was definitely above what everyone has seen, so the speed the pellets reached, it was too fast for Izawa. Barely, he maneuvered his hands to block his face from the amount of pellets. But it did nothing. The pellets were fast enough to dig into his body, but not deep enough to reach any organs. Either way, it was deadly. Also, Izawa lost sight of Hawk, making him feel his true power once again. With pure speed, he reached Izawa, before grabbing him by the face, and throwing him to the ground. I never expected that your quirk could actually be this useful. Hawk commented. I want to kill you, but all for one can't take quirks from people who are already dead, so luck is by your side, I guess. He somewhat grunted. Also, you. He pointed to our boy. This wasn't good. Even if he's damaged, he's back at full power. Not to mention that Izuku also suffered. You did not disappoint. Hawk caught his smile. Next thing to occur was Hawk, finally in full power, ready to attack. Izuku wanted to defend himself, but this was different. Hawk was now completely in control of his own body. A fast, out-of-this-world punch came to the boy. He couldn't block it. Finally, Hawk let out his anger on the now completely defenseless Izuku. A full-on barrage of punches, all of them colliding to every part of his body. Once it was over, Izuku couldn't even stand up. He fell down elegantly, completely broken. But I had my fun, said Hawk. Even in the midst of this, the students were still fighting the Nomus on top. And it looked like they were winning. To your efforts, I'll knock them out fast, Hawk said. Like I said, all for one can't take quirks from dead people. Izuku, who was barely conscious. Heck, because he said he's barely alive, was deep in thought. Although his classmates were winning the battle, it was still way too hard for them, even with 13 helping them. And now, the monster that is called Hawk will now join in the massacre. And by what Hawk meant, that all for one can take quirks, he realized what's going to happen to everyone in the long run. All for one can take quirks, and once they're taken, they will definitely die shortly after. As much as he hates everyone, he doesn't wish them death, not at all. Still, Izuku remembered something. Something he talked about with his brother. There's 2 ways. Bucky stated. The first is to truly acknowledge your enemy, he added. The first one is always the hardest. All Hanmas tend to be arrogant, so you can throw this possibility out. The second is to be beaten up, to a point where death seems inevitable. The second one is the most likely and possible scenario. Even so, if it happens, it will activate. What will activate? Izuku asked politely. The demon back. It's funny, he talked about it today. Was it a coincidence? Probably. He saw Izawa, the man who helped him fight the thing, even though he would be completely useless if he fought Hawk alone, still decided to help. If anything, Izawa's a teacher who protects his students. Granted, it would have been better to help the students above, but Izawa was an actual necessity in this battle, even though it was a loss. I forgive you, Izuku uttered under his breath. Izawa was risking his life to help Izuku. If this isn't worthy for forgiveness, then you're a fucking sadist. I'll get everyone out of this hole, Izuku exclaimed, using every ounce of strength to get up. My father's the devil, huh? Izuku remembered. Hawks, I'll show you, he uttered. I'll fucking show you what happens when you mess with the son of the devil. With pure rage, Izuku got himself back up. Albeit, his body was broken to a point where most would say it's beyond repair, it didn't matter to him, he is a Hanma after all. All for One set to knock everyone out, even him, so it wouldn't raise suspicion. Hawk regarded Izuku as a dead guy. In simple terms, he was done playing with him. He gave Hawk the satisfaction he wanted, but now it's over. It was time for Hawk to finish his mission. But I don't get it, why did my master make them all weak to electricity? Hawk was rambling about All for One's weird plan. He solely dismissed the fact that is all where Izuku could get up. Sadly for Hawk, Izuku did, and better yet, heard everything. Although being the strongest Nomu ever to be created, Hawk didn't have any flashy quirks. All he has is strength and speed enhancers. The only other quirk he has is an intelligence booster. He didn't have a quirk that enhances his senses, but he didn't even need it to feel it. The bloodlust behind him, it was menacing. For the first time, Hawk actually felt fear. Because of this new feeling, he turned around swiftly, seeing the boy he beat up so badly that most would consider death rather than this. What? This didn't make sense. When he got Izawa out of the way, Hawk was determined to finish the young boy, so he wouldn't spoil his plans anymore. Surely, he didn't hit Izuku with everything he got when Izawa was taken down. He didn't break any of his bones either, except for his ribs. Even so, the damage his body had to suffer, it would even force the most willed men to never get back up. But this was also different. The injuries Izuku endured, although they were there, he was still standing as if everything was completely fine. He wasn't stumbling, and he wasn't using his last drop of strength to stand up either. It did seem that he was completely fine even with those injuries. Why the hell am I so afraid? Hawk has never had a moment where his enemy seemed to stand up again. Even when he's holding back, his fangs are still strong enough to end any opponent he goes against. He had to acknowledge Izuku though, it seemed it was the only option. For the first time feeling fear, he didn't have the courage to confront Izuku once more. The boy was just standing there, his eyes bloodshot from everything he endured. Although his gaze was right on Hawk's, his mind was on something else. What is this? Not once, even when he was sparring with Baki, has he experienced something like this. I feel so strong. Not only has he gotten a boost in strength, the pain seemed to disappear as well. It was still there, he just didn't feel it. But he knew he didn't have time to be perplexed by his new strength. Hawks was still standing, ready to attack once more. Although that wasn't the case, Hawk seems too nervous to even move. With this newfound power, Izuku wasn't as wary as before. In fact, he doesn't feel anything anymore. His fear for Hawk has diminished, but it seemed to change sides. This must be the demon back Baki talked about. It seemed to be the only plausible explanation. The increase in strength, topped off with an almost broken body, it's a shocker. Wait. If I had become this much stronger with a damaged body. He knew his body was, in simple terms, fucked up. Yet he feels way stronger than before. It's only his first time experiencing this miracle, so it got him thinking. How strong would I be if I was perfectly fine? Looking back at Hawk, he understood if they fight once more, it's not going to be a one-sided match. No, maybe it will be. Why the hell are you so afraid of? Hawk asked himself, as his body was in a seemingly paralyzed state. He's just a simple brat. He's probably using his last drop of strength just stand up, right? Hawk wanted it to be true, but he doesn't know anymore. I don't even need to do anything. He's probably going to fall down after just one step. After trying to come up with anything to ease himself, he lost sight of his enemy. All Hawk could see was a speckle of dust dispersing on the same spot where Izuku had stood. He disappeared from his sight. Hawk knew this was no illusion, or some sort of trick. Izuku just moved too fast for him to see. As much as Hawk hates to admit it, the tables have turned. Feeling the menacing presence behind him, Hawk turned swiftly to see Izuku, getting Izawa out of the rubble. Although Izuku had a neutral face, there was anger underneath. The same man he hates as much as everyone else in school tried to help him, even if death was a possibility. Almost a certain possibility. He put Izawa down on the ground gently, before fixing his gaze back to Hawk. Hope you're ready for round 2. He wasn't ready for a rematch. Although Hawk is definitely strong, his courage and willpower however. Aughh. Hawk screamed in pain, being punched to the stomach, getting sent back and crashing into the fountain. Because I'm not taking no for an answer. Although Izuku doesn't like killing others when he's not a complete psychopath, it's not like he won't kill when he needs to. Hawk got back up from the rubble, being afraid of the boy even more. Just one punch from Izuku already drilled the fact that defeat is almost certain. He wasn't just feeling fear anymore, he was scared shitless. Are you really that afraid of me? Izuku noticed the feat Hawk had. It was practically radiating off of him. You're all for one's greatest creation, act like it. The words of encouragement didn't work, Hawk has stopped working. It doesn't matter, Hawk was going to pay, whether he's ready or not. With a quick dash, Izuku was now once again near Hawk. He noticed him, and threw a punch out of nowhere. But it wasn't a sharp punch or anything. He only threw it out of fear, and in hopes it would keep Izuku away from him. Obviously it didn't. Izuku dodged it with a measly amount of effort. The thing is, he could have blocked it, but he doesn't want to risk it. Although he feels no pain, he generally understands that his body is damaged. With a body like that, even blocking a punch or kick could do something. Seeing fear in Hawk's eyes, Izuku could not believe he is the same person he fought prior. But it didn't matter. Throwing a kick straight to Hawk's jaw, it collided. With increased strength, Izuku's kick was devastating. The sound of the impact was immense, but as the students were fighting for their lives above, they didn't pay mind to the sound. This would have killed anyone, probably even All Might. But luck was on Hawk's side. He had pride in his jaw. Albeit it didn't kill him, nor knocked him out, it still rattled his brain to the extreme. Hawk couldn't remain standing. He couldn't differentiate of what's up and down. Just like that, he was done. He couldn't fight anymore. Even if he could, the fear he has, it would cloud his judgment. It was over. Now all that's left is the Nomus on top. Granted, he wanted to go up and help. But not that many Nomus were left. The students in 13 were winning. With that, Izuku has time. Can you still hear me? He wanted to make sure Hawk didn't lose his eardrums from the kick. The sound of the impact was loud, and Hawk was deadass at the center. Answer me. Izuku demanded Hawk, who was already frightened for his life. Hawk, answer me. He demanded again, this time his voice sounded like it could be considered a threat. Finally, Hawk responded, by nodding to his command. Izuku already knew he could hear him, since he flinched when he was asked the first time. He said All for One can't take quirks from deceased people, right? To be fair, Izuku was out on the ground barely alive, so he might have misheard something. He just wanted to make sure he heard it correctly. Why yes H, he can only take quirks from others if they're alive and K keep them or give it to someone. Hawk was stammering like a trainwreck, in fear for his life. He even gave him more information than he asked. Atlas, he's catching on. So tell me, if you have captured us all and taken our quirks, what would happen next? An instant frightened reaction from Hawk. Izuku pieced it together, the moment All for One takes all of their quirks, why would he need them anymore? We would kill everyone. A blunt answer. Hawk has to know that answering like that doesn't help his position at all. +5 for honesty though. Then tell me, how many people have you killed? In all honesty, his reply decides his fate. Izuku has to know if he deserves to die or not. But due to unforeseen circumstances, Hawk began to cry. I lost count. He let his tears out like a fucking baby. It made the reply seem less inhumane, but Izuku knows damn well someone like him can't be left alive. I was just following orders. Hawk knew his death was certain. Not being able to take it like a man, he broke down. Please don't kill me, I don't want to die. He was practically begging for his life. All those people he has killed, they were the same, begging for life. The good thing to mention is Hawk hated the people who accepted their faith and remained calm till the end. He didn't have an answer as to why, but now he does. He hated them because deep down, he knew he's not like them. Hawk can't accept death, no matter if it's right near his doorstep. Did they all say the same thing before you killed them? You didn't fucking care about anyone you killed. So, do you really think I'd let someone like you live? Even most mass murderers remember the names of the people they killed. If there was hope, now there's none. All hope was lost for Hawk. Take it like a man, you're dying today. Izuku gave him a chance to take his death with no fear. Sadly, Hawk couldn't, his fear for death seemed to skyrocket through the roof. The boy noticed it. There's no hope for him left, so he raised his hand, gripping it tightly. He wanted it to end with one single blow to the head, full force. If it somehow doesn't kill Hawk, then he will suffer before he meets his fate. I don't think he is. It never seems to be the end. You defeat the boss, then a fucking secret boss appears. The entity which spoke grabbed Izuku's hand. Although Izuku couldn't exactly say the grip strength of the entity was strong, since his body was pretty much numb everywhere. What he can mention, however, is that he couldn't force the thing to let go. Let me guess. Izuku was certain who this man is. Appearing out of nowhere, and exactly at the right time. All for one. Izuku spoke. Correct. Next thing to occur was Izuku being thrown back by All for One into the distance. It was a strong throw, as Izuku couldn't negate it. You must be strong, defeating Hawk isn't some simple task. He complimented the green-haired boy. Although Hawk's an idiot, he is All for One's strongest Nomu. And you, Hawk. You're going to need upgrades. All for One grabbed Hawk before opening a portal and throwing him in. This was all going back to square one. And Izuku didn't like it one bit. Fighting Hawk was already enough to push his body above his limits, and now him. What are you doing here? Izuku had to know, but he already had a gist of it. One thing's for certain, he's definitely stronger than Hawk, he knows that quite well. To save Hawk, of course. He may be an idiot sometimes, but he's needed. I never expected that I would be needed in my own plan. Hawk's even stronger than All Might. Clearly deep in thought, All for One thought the connection. You're the ninth holder of One for All, aren't you? That seemed to be the only plausible explanation. He saw that Hawk's body was damaged. To do that requires insane physical strength, like All Might. This couldn't be better, One for All being finally in my grasp. While All for One was fantasizing about taking One for All, Izuku had to intrude. I was forced to give it back. Then what is your quirk? Still, if it's not One for All, the boy's quirk is still going to be very useful. I don't have a quirk. What? Then you beat Hawk with physical strength, yeah. Clearly looking into Izuku's eyes, he could see it was no lie. Although it seemed impossible, All for One has heard rumors about someone or something that has done such inhuman feats. If it's true, then I'm perplexed. Still, All for One acknowledging Izuku wasn't going to change much. The true monster that stands near the fountain, Izuku knows there's no hope if they fought, even if the demon back is in play. So, Izuku didn't want to fight All for One, as him losing is already a given. So, he decided to run. He wanted to go up the staircase and defeat the other Nomus left and get everyone the fuck out of there. But he quickly noticed the sad truth. The moment Izuku moved, the gravity around him seemed to change. Let me guess, you thought about going up, kill the remaining Nomus and run away, right? His intuition was spot on, which Izuku hated to admit. Still, the boy couldn't forget that All for One can take quirks. Quirks can do anything. And if there's a quirk that can steal quirks, then the user can do anything. Did you think for a second that there might be another batch Nomus waiting outside the gate? Even if there were, Izuku would have easily created a path for everyone. But the gravity quirk he activated on Izuku, it's too powerful. Maybe I should just let them all in right now, for them to lose all of their hope. All for One didn't even need to give the command. It seemed the Nomus couldn't control themselves and broke through the gate. The gate wasn't just broken down by the Nomus, it was completely punched out of its hinges. Surprisingly, the gate was sent flying, almost quite an abnormal distance, landing near All for One and Izuku. No Nomu of mine can do that. Although Hawk could do that, All for One sent him back to their headquarters. After so long, All for One is getting a rematch. Except this time, All for One had unusual events unfold to him for the past months. And those events made him stronger than one could imagine, to a point where he could even create Hawk. The students knew the only person who can send a 10-ton metal door flying like that is no other than the symbol of peace. Even so, Izuku can't even imagine All Might beating him. Something must have happened for All for One to become this strong. Still, Izuku put some faith into him, maybe everything will be fine after all. The thing is, the students got a good look after the huge dust cloud disappeared from where the gate was ripped off of its hinges. As their smiles of hope came, they quickly left, as if they weren't even there. Because it wasn't All Might. As the dust cloud dissipated, everyone had a sense of relief, seeing All Might ready to save the day just like before. Except it wasn't All Might, it was an entity none of the students have ever seen before. An entity that came out of nowhere. As their smiles of hope came, they quickly left as if they weren't there in the first place. It was unusual. A literal bloodbath happened right behind that mysterious person. Over 100 Nomus were present, dead on the ground right behind him. Yet, none of the students seemed to notice. It wasn't All Might, but they couldn't force themselves to look away, as for some reason. The Nomus the students were fighting, they can only follow commands from their master, All for One. But even they couldn't get their eyes off of him. It's just, the man had an aura around him. Funny, actually. Kirishima was the only one who not only could sense the aura, but also could feel the similarities it has to Izuku. But weirdly enough, the aura was still leagues above anything Kirishima has seen. Even his master. The death match between the students and Nomus came to a sudden stop, the entity's presence alone changed everything. As the entities started walking closer to everyone, all the others could do was move out of its way. Everyone instinctively knew that they cannot mess with that beast, villain or not. What just happened? All for One had to ask. The feud between the students and his Nomus came to sudden stop. Complete silence overwhelmed everyone on the top. I'd like to know the same thing. Both of them knew this isn't normal, no matter how you look at it. Nomus are seemingly brain-dead humans, already considered to be animals without free will. All they know is to follow commands. It doesn't matter if All for One orders all of them to jump into an active volcano, they'd still do it without a second thought. That's what's bothering the two. Animals that only know one thing, to obey their master. All the Nomus were only given one order, to attack anyone who tries to get away. This was a first for All for One, for his Nomus to disobey his command. After he issues a command to his nomus, that's what they think of. That's all they can think of. And so, the reason for the unusual actions of everyone finally came into their sight. Funny enough, he never saw a single picture of him. He has only heard stories, his otherworldly feats, and that he's the devil. Bad. Thus one glance from afar was enough for Izuku to wholeheartedly understand that the stories and feats he heard are not simple stories. And if anything, they're probably watered down. Wait, is he? Even in that demonic presence, All For One seemed to hold his composure. He still had the gravity-altering quirk activated on Izuku, but its strength seemed to weaken, letting Izuku almost out of his grasp. Is he Ujiro Hanma? All For One was on the same boat. Not having seen a single picture of the monstrosity. But he did have a bit of info. One being is that he has red hair, and that anyone who has had an encounter with that man, all of them depicted Ujiro the same way. He's the devil. For now, Izuku couldn't argue. When Baki called his own father the devil, he thought it was just a fancy word to describe his strength. Or what else might have been plausible was that he was a human trying to act as the devil. But now, Izuku had to agree. Even when you look at him from a distance, the word devil is the only thing that comes up. And as of now, it seemed Izuku had reached his limit. The reason he could still move, let alone fight, was because of two key factors. The first being the activation of the demon back, and the second was endorphins, a chemical produced by the body to nullify pain. And obviously, everything has an end to it. Both of the key factors seemed to die out. The gravity around Izuku was weaker than it was prior. But even so, with both of the key factors out, just a simple weak punch to the face is enough to force Izuku unconscious. He couldn't hold on. Due to the increased gravity, added with the fact he can't resist even a slightly bit anymore, made the fall even more severe. All For One heard the loud thud, turning his gaze on the seemingly dead boy. He was out, All For One definitely knew that, so he deactivated the quirk, finally letting Izuku get a slight bit of peace. All For One only turned around for a few seconds, but those seconds was enough for everything to change. As he turned around back, Ujiro was already gone. He's gone. Quickly, All For One activated his sense quirk. Although mostly it's used to sense danger, it can also sense any person nearby. I'm right here. A deep voice echoed into All For One's ears. The sound signified that he was definitely close. There was just one problem, thought. He couldn't detect him, even with his sense quirk active. All For One sharpened his sense, and increased the use of the sense quirk. Although it's a very good quirk, it has its limitations. He still couldn't sense him. Next thing All For One felt was a tap on his shoulder. Clearly, a bit surprised, he tried to elbow him out of the blue. Obviously, All For One hit air, he disappeared once again. Afraid, are you? Next thing he heard was a voice from the front. As always, he quickly turned around, seeing the demon in his full glory. Even so, All For One seemed to hold his composure. I'm not afraid, I'm simply not letting you get an upper hand on me. All For One lied as naturally as he breathed. How did my sense quirk not detect you? The quirk has limitations, but not to an extreme where a human couldn't be detected. Maybe I'm just good at hiding. Honestly, this seemed to be the only possible explanation. Or maybe your quirk can only detect others if they have any intentions to harm you. The only limitation All For One's sense quirk had, Ujiro figured it out in an instant. After getting new quirks for the past months, he did his testings with them. Still, it couldn't be a coincidence, could it? How do you know that? All For One's curiosity spiked. Honestly, it could be luck, it seems too good to be true. All those new quirks you got over the past months, you didn't actually hunt for them. As Ujiro muttered those words, All For One's fear for the truth got even worse. The users tried to hunt you. All For One had unusual events unfold over the past months. Naturally, he brushed those events off, since one after the other, All For One was gradually becoming stronger. You never asked yourself how all of those people just kept finding every new base even after you relocated. All For One made a mistake, a rookie mistake. He never asked himself how so many people, with such powerful quirks, just kept finding his headquarters seemingly out of nowhere. Granted, its locations were never public. The only ones who had knowledge was All For One himself, the doctor who helped All For One to heal his body, Hawk, and the traitor of UA. I'm disappointed. All of that happened, All For One didn't even try to bat an eye. Was it because he was growing ever so stronger after every encounter? Was this why he didn't even ask himself once as to how this was happening? If he didn't ask himself back then, he did now. But he didn't need to anymore. All For One was certain that the answer was already standing right in front of him. How did you do it? All For One stammered. His fear increased exponentially. After a few encounters with a group of heroes who had infiltrated his headquarters, he took care of them. Although a few months back he was injured, even in that state, only All Might was a hindrance to him. After a period of time, he got his hands on one of the best healing quirks he has ever seen. And because of that newly found quirk, the Doctor of All for One lost any helpful use he had. And so, he got rid of him fairly quickly. I have my ways. All for One shouldn't be surprised. There's no way Yujiro would have answered such a question. Still, as of now, another question came to All for One's head. Why did you do it? Why were you deliberately giving me all those quirks? Albeit happy that All for One reached such levels of strength, he now needed answers. For you to become an obstacle in the future. Yujiro let out a sick smile, his voice brimming with uncontrollable joy. All for One's theory was right. Yujiro was deliberately trying to make him stronger, to become an obstacle. But why? And for what? Once again, another theory came into his head. The only plausible scenario he could think of was because of Yujiro. He was making All for One stronger so he could fight him in the future. The thing is, it implied that All for One wasn't ready to fight Yujiro, or at least not yet. Being an insanely prideful man, All for One couldn't let this disgrace go unnoticed. He is powerful, and he knows that. Any hero, be it a top hero or even All Might, the levels All for One has reached, none of them pose a problem, or at least not anymore. It was demeaning for All for One. The gain in power in such a short time, it got to his head. You miscalculated, I've reached levels others can't even fathom. He's the same as Izuku, gaining power in such a short time, anybody would be affected, even All for One. With all of this, I can be considered a god among this world. And you dare to imply I'm not ready to fight you. All for One lost all of his reasoning. Having no humble trait left inside. I've heard stories about you, Mr. Strongest creature on the planet. All for One basically spat those words out of his mouth. Yujiro just stood there, on the verge of facepalming. I'd like that title, and I'm going to take it from you. With that, chains came out from the ground, right behind where the devil stood. It restrained both his legs and arms. But he wasn't done. He activated the gravity quirk, the one he used on Izuku prior, but the efficacy was stronger. You're just a measly human with one single quirk, and once I break you mentally, I'll be taking that quirk. The chains hardened, starting to pull Yujiro down to the ground. All for One wasn't joking about the mentally breaking part. He's going to torture Yujiro, to a point where he'd beg for death. His fingers turned into barbed wires. Able to control them freely, All for One already had his torture method in place. Simply, he's going to embed the wires into his chest, then he'd start playing around with his organs, destroying them freely. Given the fact he has healing quirks in his disposal, it's going to make it even more fun. As he rammed his barbed wire fingers to Yujiro's chest, the horrible realization came striking down. You misinterpreted what I said. No matter how much force All for One applied, he couldn't get past Yujiro's muscles. And even more frightening thing All for One saw was that Yujiro was unaffected by the gravity and the chains. I didn't give you those quirks so we could fight in the future. With that, Yujiro broke out of the chains with no effort whatsoever. Clearly, a bit agitated that All for One was drunk with power, he gave him the truth. I gave you those quirks so you could fight my son in the future. All for One was at a loss for words. The man behind the unusual encounters he had with heroes over the past months was now in his field of view. Obviously, All for One had a hint that this wasn't normal, given the fact they always seemed to find his new headquarters, even after a few days or even hours after moving out. But even the most compass people are easily subjugated to an abnormal increase in power. All for One wasn't an exception. All those quirks, albeit almost all of them were good, at the same time, almost all of the heroes didn't use them as efficiently as possible. Frankly, he was frightened that heroes kept finding his new headquarters. But after getting a surge in power after every encounter, the fear dropped to a point as if there was none. And later, he started getting excited, almost patiently waiting for heroes to find his place once again. Heck, sometimes he even stayed at his most recently raided base, in hopes they would come sooner. And later, he didn't even see them as a threat. Granted, he was frightened that heroes kept finding his base at first, but this was different. It's as if he was waiting for a meal. Almost every day, he patiently waited and waited. All his plans for creating Nomus came to a sudden halt. He couldn't create any with those heroes always finding his base so quickly. But of course he didn't hate it, he loved it. So that's all he did almost every day, wait. Obviously, the fights were always one-sided, and the winning side never had any fun fighting them. But the only thing that brought him satisfaction was the quirks. And one day, the heroes stopped coming, seemingly out of nowhere. Naturally, this would have been a huge letdown. But it wasn't, not in the slightest. All for One now had an arsenal of quirks that others couldn't even fathom. All Might was his rival, his one true enemy that always seemed to get in his way. But not anymore. With this much power now in All for One's disposal, even All Might wouldn't even bring him joy if they fought once more. He had a thought, a simple thought. If there was an actual person stronger than him prior, he certainly had surpassed him by now. He was actually referring to Yujiro. He never saw a clear picture of him, all he has heard from others that he has red hair, and all of them called him the devil. But he only remembered him by one thing, and one thing alone, his title. Strongest creature on the planet. All for One's pride, mind, quirks, skill, all of them had surpassed Yujiro by now, right? Granted, he never tested it. Even so, he called himself the strongest. And also, he wholeheartedly believed his claim to be true, that he's the strongest now. But then the day came when he met him. Even from a distance of over 100 feet, he could see Yujiro clearly. The aura he was radiating. Even the prideful man All for One is, he now understood why that man was granted that title. It was a shocker, finding out he was the man behind the heroes attacking him. At first, the only thing he could describe Yujiro was being an idiot. Why would he send weak heroes to a man like All for One, a man with a quirk that lets him take other quirks? Now, he wanted to know. And the answer he got was even more absurd. His goal wasn't to defeat All for One, but to make him stronger than ever before. But that's crazy, right? Why would anyone want the world's strongest villain to exist becoming even more stronger? That's not how a man thinks, that's not how a normal man thinks. The title, Strongest Villain, wasn't a fake one. The only hero that could defeat him was All Might, the strongest hero. The others are just cannon fodder. But then, he got the idea. The only thing stuck in All for One's mind was this. He's implying he was second place. That was absurd. It hit him straight to the pride. All this power in his hands, enough to be called a god, and a simple man implied he was stronger. All for One wasn't taking it. He tried to subdue Yujiro, to torture him to a point where he'd beg for death. He tried to do all of this to show him the true difference in power. It's a shame, really. All for One was a tactic villain, having both mind and power above everyone. He wasn't an animal that attacked just anyone for bloodlust either. He could solve problems with words as well, something barely any villains could. But now look at him, clearly beyond reason just because the man implied he was stronger. And the implication wasn't a bluff either way. Yujiro broke out of the chains, and seemed unaffected by the gravity All for One altered. And then, Yujiro uttered something far more worse All for One could have expected. All of this planning, sacrificing at least 1,000 heroes, it was just for his son to have an enemy to fight in the future. A plan like that can't even be considered normal. It's inhumane in too many levels. It's not even something All for One would even dare do. What? What else could All for One possibly say? All Yujiro saw in him was a toy for his son to break in the near future. Hell, All for One already made the connection. The boy that beat Hawk, he was Yujiro's son, there's no doubt about it. Like I said, I gave you those quirks so you could fight my son in the future. He heard it quite well the first time, but it still sounded way too bizarre. Why you sent over 800 heroes to their deaths? All in the sake of me becoming stronger. That's not something one would think of, let alone do. All for One was completely baffled. If anything, it proved Yujiro was no different from a villain. You must have known you sent all of them to their deaths. This proves you're a villain like me. Even so, he tried to somewhat attack Yujiro mentally. To make him feel some regret due to his actions, since it costed over 800 lives. Clearly, All for One forgot to account the fact that Yujiro was different. I don't count myself as a villain, nor as a hero. I want to play with something even if it's considered good or bad. If it's fun, I'll do it. Clearly, the mental attack failed miserably. Yujiro didn't feel nothing when he sent all those heroes to their deaths. He knew they'd die and make All for One stronger. I'm giving you a choice. Either leave peacefully, or leave mentally damaged, which one do you prefer? Even as Yujiro said it, there was no intimidation oozing from him. He doesn't want to kill him, he is his son's toy after all. Still, he gave All for One two choices, not one of them having death as the result. His pride has been so many times it's starting to break. Mentally damaged, what did he mean by that? It was easy, actually. Once again, it implied Yujiro was stronger. Again, All for One was beyond reason, considering he's one of the smartest villains to exist. Don't joke with me. He lost it. Words won't get into his head anymore. All he thinks about is proving Yujiro wrong, to prove he's stronger. Most people forget that he has a superiority complex. He always seen himself as above all others. And the reason why such a side of his never surfaced, not even once, is because he was above all others. Even if some hero or villain came up to him and babbled about his strength exceeding his, he'd just laugh it off. Those claims always amused All for One. But you could say Yujiro's claim had an effect because he has an eye-catching title, the strongest creature. Even with a superiority complex, he definitely acknowledged Yujiro to be strong, but of course not stronger than himself. His pride as a man has been tarnished by Yujiro to a point I'd only heal if that man died. So, with pure instincts to prove himself, he attacked Yujiro. He enlarged his hand with all sorts of quirks, increasing its strength and speed to levels far beyond what's natural. Enraged, he used his flight quirk, which he now had for a while, and flew right to the direction of Yujiro. He cocked his hand back, before uttering in his head that he's the strongest. This is what happens when you dare to ins. He didn't have time to even finish it, the fight was already over. With one measly punch, All for One was launched back to the opposite direction he was flying. This was different, he could feel it. It was a measly punch, just one single punch. Yet that punch did more damage than he ever felt before. With pure instincts, he activated all of his healing quirks he could, and healed himself from the pain. Although the physical pain was gone, the mental pain stayed. Now he clearly understood what Yujiro meant. Luckily, he still had control of that flight quirk of his, so he stopped the momentum. Looking at Yujiro with confused and frightened eyes on what just happened. He felt the punch, but he couldn't see it coming. Finally, the fact was engraved into his head. The title he had, All for One, thought it belonged to him now. Clearly, he was dead wrong. Once some more. Having his super hearing quirk active at all times, he heard Yujiro mutter those words of comfort. Fuck it, it wasn't comforting at all. He does not want to experience the pain he felt once again, even for less than a second. Finally, All for One did something logical. He opened a portal and ran away. Or was it a tactical retreat? It doesn't matter, All for One escaped, ready to live another day. He has to become stronger, he now so desperately wants to defeat Yujiro. As for Yujiro, this wasn't supposed to happen. Sure, Hawk and the Nomus, they were in the plan, but All for One coming wasn't, so he had to interfere. As everything came to an end, he now looked at his boy, who was still out like a bear in winter. Finally, the students in 13 on top defeated all of the Nomus, and no casualties on their part. Everything turned out fine, except for Izawa and Izuku, who were now not that far away from death. Izawa will survive, his injuries are severe, but not that severe. As for Izu, the only reason he's still breathing is because of the Hanma's rapid regeneration. Even so, he's going to be out for a while. Fighting with a broken body has its tolls after all. You did good, but you're still not ready to fight him. He spoke to his unconscious son. It's not like Izuku could hear him, but it didn't matter. Let alone me. It was over. And by that I mean completely over. All for One retreated and all the Nomus were dead, or unable to fight. The Eater ran to call for help, using his quirk to the absolute max. Not once have the students looked down, as they were too occupied on the top. Finally, they got to take a peek of what's down below, and it was even more shocking than what they saw beyond the gate. It was the same, over 100 Nomus lying on the ground, dead. What the hell happened down there? Was all they could ask themselves. In the far distance, they could see Izawa and Izuku, both unconscious. Yujiro, in fact, was nowhere to be seen. Who was that man? They never saw a man with such menacing aura before. They'd like to know more, but frankly, it's a miracle he's not here anymore. Even so, they just had to ask this question, most of them, in their heads. What the hell did Izawa do? Their idiocy has no limits. Having not seen a single picture of his father, Izuku instinctively knew that was him. The title he holds, the strongest creature. It has to be true, right? He has to be the strongest, right? Strong enough to defeat All for One. He didn't know. Izuku didn't feel any comfort knowing he was in the picture, no relief whatsoever. But it was too late to worry about anything else except for his life. The demon back, along with the endorphins, both of them suddenly ran out. Not only did he lose a huge amount of strength, the pain resurfaced once more. With that, he fell into the void. The way Baki described his father, he wasn't certain that Yujiro came here to save him, or in fact to do anything. As he fell down onto the ground, he still had worries of life or death. Only time will tell. Which brings us here. Comfortably laying down on the soft bed, Izuku was already in the hospital being treated for his injuries he bared. Except, he wasn't in the hospital, Izuku was being treated for his injuries in the nurse office of UA. Izawa was nowhere in sight. But it's not like Izuku would know that, he's still unconscious. Unlike the green-haired boy, Izawa was being treated in an actual hospital. Chiyu's quirk doesn't work if the said person is unconscious. But still, she's not of those fake doctors who can do their work only with their quirks. Still, she's gotten old. As of now, her surgery skills aren't as good as before. And with the injuries both Izawa and Izuku had gotten, it was best to leave it to the professionals. But why was Izuku in the nurse's office? The heroes did actually send him to an actual hospital to get treated, but the doctors told the heroes it wasn't needed. Izuku's body was healing way faster than normal. Even in the horrifying state he was in, the doctors came to the conclusion that operating wasn't necessary. And by the speed of his regeneration capabilities, they said he should be completely fine in a day or so. So with the information in hand, UA decided it's best that Izuku was taken back to them. And now, the estimated time for him to heal has now passed. Granted, they knew his body would be completely healed in that time, they were still uncertain when he would wake up. Now, he opened his eyes. Izuku finally woke up. Although more than a day has passed, most thought he would wake up at the exact time he was healed. Still, it was the same day, but he woke up a few hours later than expected. The shining light irritated his eyes, forcing him to shut them instinctively. Slowly, he opened them again, trying to get used to the light with time. So I survived. He lived to tell another tale. He was grateful for that. Turns out his father actually came there to save him. At this point he hasn't moved a single muscle, yet his body was aching all over. Funny, it's been way too long since his muscles actually ached. Heck, he even thought that Hanmas don't have that function in their bodies. The fight with Hawk, he definitely passed above his limits. For that, he was extra careful of every move he tried to make, since the condition of his body was unclear for him. He endured enough, now all he wants is a goddamn rest. And in all fairness, he got it. His body didn't hurt at all, except for the aching, that's pretty much it. Honestly, he wanted to leave and go home, but he noticed something. Or rather, he felt something. Don't tell me. The boy wasn't worried or anything. In fact, there was no reason to dramatically think of what it could be, since he already knew the moment it crossed his mind. He never took a look at his surroundings, but it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. The moment he opened his eyes and saw the roof of the building he was in, he immediately knew he was in the UA nurse's office. He had no reason as to look around, he only does that when he's in unfamiliar ground. What he was feeling was familiar, and forgotten at the same time. It's been way too long since this happened, that's why it felt so forgotten. Straight to the chase, it's been over 5 months since the last time it occurred. Nijira was holding his hand. Her soft hands were gently pressed against his, and yet her grip was tight at the same time. Back then, Izuku was less than an inch taller than her, and his hands were barely a bit larger. Yet now, having grown 7 inches in the months, his hands obviously grew a swell. As of now, his hands were far bigger than hers. The tight yet soft grip of hers, it was because of worry. Izuku understood that just by feeling her hand. Even so, the way Nijira held his hand, it's like they always did when they were a couple. So she finally got the courage, huh? He had to applaud her for this. He has a gist on how it would feel knowing you betrayed your boyfriend over something that wasn't even true. She got the courage to confront her, so will he. He jolted himself back from bed, now facing his ex-lover. Now he knew why she wasn't saying anything. She had her head laid down onto the sheets, next to his legs, fast asleep. Her eyes were red, it was sad to realize that she cried herself to sleep. But it wasn't the case anymore. The sudden commotion of Izuku jolting himself back up seemed to wake her up. Was this a bad thing? For them to finally meet? It doesn't matter. No matter how they encounter each other, it was destined to happen. She lifted her head up and saw it. It happened. After over 5 months, they locked eyes once more. Although her hair was a mess, she was still beautiful as ever. Although Izuku wasn't happy seeing her, he wasn't sad either, must be because of the circumstances, right? Turns out, her eyes still had enough juice to cry once again. All she wants to do is give him a hug and call him an idiot for almost losing his life. But she knows she can't, everything's different now. After all, it wasn't Izuku who broke the relationship, was it? Although it was silence, it wasn't the uncomfortable kind. Only now has she realized they were holding hands. Instantly, she remembered it was her who initiated it. Ah, sorry. She quickly let go. Izuku might have found it strange, or even weird. Since after all, they're not dating anymore. It's fine. Well actually, he wasn't really bothered by it. Still, Nijira didn't know what to make of this, it's her first time having such a moment after all. How are you feeling? She had to know. Once she heard he was brought here unconscious, her fear for his well-being spiked. She even witnessed his body heal up all on its own so fast she thought it was a healing quirk in play. Still, she was worried. Apart from the aching I got all around my body, I feel fine. Yeah, he had no other injuries on him whatsoever, they all healed in a day's time. Hanmas do be built different after all. It was relieving to hear that. He already looks to be completely fine, but that's not always the case, internal injuries are a thing. That's good to hear. She let out a weak smile, her eyes already having shed a tear down her face. How long have I been out? For over a day. Dang, so he was out only for a day, and he's completely fine. Sometimes, he wished he would have became a Hanmas sooner. How long have you been here? Considering she was asleep, Izuku assumed she's been here for over 10 hours. Probably over 20 hours. She didn't seem happy saying it, even affixing her gaze somewhere else to not look him in the eyes. It was clear, she looked away because she didn't want to sound like she's obsessed with him. Still, 20 hours, he had to give it to her. Izuku's aware it wasn't an easy time being here, considering the sheets were soaked up from her tears. Why would you go so far? You know you're the only one that's getting hurt. Izuku was bewildered by her going to such lengths. Those 20 hours have taken a toll on her, as it's taking her effort to stop herself from stumbling from tiredness. Considering what everyone did to you, including me, it's a small price to pay. Her tone sounded regretful. She definitely felt bad about what she's done. And I'm sorry. The apology, it reached Izuku's ears gently. Clearly, this was something he expected from her, but it still caught him off guard. Unlike most, this felt like a true apology, her words were genuine. Still, this can't justify what she did, right? Only a single tear has fallen since they started talking. Now, Nichijaya couldn't control it. Just remembering what she did made her break the threshold, and all the tears came falling down. I'm sorry for not believing you. The emotional pain he must have went through, Nichijaya couldn't even begin to fathom. Everyone you know just accused you being a traitor, seemingly out of nowhere. Nichijaya tried to man up, but her tears couldn't stop. I shouldn't have done that when you were being escorted away. The slap to the face, he remembered it, vividly even. It's not like it hurt him physically, he barely felt it when it happened. It was a mental attack, one of the biggest reasons of why Izuku snapped. What happened can't be undone, you can't change the past. He turned around from her, to not look at her sapphire eyes. This seemingly unexplained action wasn't for him, it was best for her. He doesn't know what to say, in fact, both didn't know what to say next. And so, they didn't say a word, both kept quiet in the overwhelming silence. Luckily, somebody came by and interrupted the uncomfortable situation. Of course, it was Nezu, who came barging in unannounced. Oh, you're awake. Izuku nodded, not knowing how to reply. Like how the fuck do you reply to someone when they ask if you're awake? Nichijaya, could you please leave? I have something important to discuss with Midoriya. Clearly, this must be important, so she obliged. See you, then. With those last words, she left the nurse office, leaving Izuku a bit at a loss on what Nezu has to discuss. I hope I didn't interrupt something. Nezu spoke carefully. It feels like he did interrupt something. You didn't. That was reassuring, making Nezu sigh of relief. Considering the new Izuku, who knows what he would have did to Nezu. Is it about the Nomus you want to discuss about? Although the incident in USJ needs more clarification, there's something else Nezu's here to talk about. No? Then what? And the relief was gone. His tone was frightening, making Nezu swallow his dry saliva. There's many things Nezu wants to know, and has a feeling Izuku has the answers. But, Nezu's going to keep it to himself, Izuku's likely to not give him an answer. It's about the new student. I need you to promise me one thing before you meet her. So it's a female. Not like Izuku needed to know, but if Nezu's showing a frightened expression, this must be something important. I need to promise what? Yes, Izuku is curious why he needs to promise something before meeting her. Does Nezu want him to guard her? If so, why can't the heroes do it? That unless she does something bad, you can't harm her. Who the fuck does he think he is? Who does he take Izuku for? Some sort of animal. What do you take me for, Nezu? Some dude who attacks women. Obviously, Izu wasn't happy. Nezu didn't think this through. Once again, he swallowed his saliva out of fear. And no. I didn't mean it like that. Nezu, who was frightened, tried to relieve the tension, but it wasn't really working. He really needed to tell her name from the get-go. Then why do I need to promise you not to harm her? Although angry that Nezu saw him in such a way, his curiosity was there as well. That student must mean something, right? For Nezu to personally ask Izuku such a question, she must be someone he knows. Or better yet, someone he hates. And in all fairness, he didn't expect this. Because the new student is Himiko Toga. Nezu screamed her name as fast as possible, so Izuku wouldn't kill him. It did stop the misunderstanding in a heartbeat, but Izuku had way more questions filling up in his head. What? Because the new student is Himiko Toga. Nezu screamed her name as fast as possible, so Izuku wouldn't kill him. It did stop the misunderstanding in a heartbeat, but Izuku had way more questions filling up in his head. What? Izuku replied slightly annoyed. That name did reminiscent back memories he did not wish to remember. I know you have something to say in this, since it's because of her actions we thought you were the traitor. A small wind of regret came crashing into Nezu. As an animal that has an intelligence quirk, it was quite a pathetic decision on his part. That's why I asked, why is a villain going to UA? Izuku had a lot to say in this. The same individual who almost ruined his entire future is now going to be a fellow classmate of his. I know you see her as a villain, but considering her past, it's no wonder she turned into one. To be fair, Izuku knows everyone has a complex life, even if he's not aware of it. It's called Sonder. You shouldn't be too quick to judge. Nezu exclaimed, hoping Izuku would understand. In some way he did, but what Nezu just quoted was downright anger-inducing. Too quick to judge. Sezu. The same person who already had suspicions of me being the traitor just because I was better than everyone. Izuku lashed out. That hypocritical sentence seemed to hit a nerve. You were so fucking sure I was the one that you didn't even let me explain myself. Blackmailed me into giving one for all back and sent me into the slammer, never to step foot here again. Izuku claimed, his angry tone made Nezu gulp down his saliva as he was intimidated. Only now has Nezu realized what kind of a hypocritical sentence he just stammered out, and to Izuku of all people. I'm sorry, and my mistake. Nezu tried to compose himself, but due to the pressure Izuku was radiating made it almost impossible. Izuku did the same, what happened already happened. He let his anger disappear as it was unwanted and calmed himself. Whatever. Izuku exclaimed, making Nezu almost sigh of relief that he managed to calm down. And yeah, I promise, I won't do anything to her unless I need to. Izuku finally complied with Nezu's demand. Relieved that Toga is going to be safe, he decided that it's best to leave him alone, and that he also wants to desperately leave. Izuku always brings fear into Nezu by just standing in his presence. That's all I needed to hear. I'll be on my way then. He kept it short and professional, while in reality Nezu wanted to get out of here as fast as possible. Leaving Izuku all alone, he pondered on what to as of now. He wanted a break, but thinking about it more clearly, there's no need for one. Izuku was confident in his strength, but meeting two individuals with strength on par with his, and one being in another league, there's no time to rest. Given the fact he heard All For One mentioning that he's going to upgrade Hawk, he probably is way stronger than him now. I need to one-up my training. He came up with the only plausible solution. He looked at a clock in the wall. The classes are still going, so he decided there's no harm in meeting her right now. Class 1A. After everything that went down, the entirety of Class 1A seems to be doing just fine. Once the news came that Izawa is going to be okay, the students' fear for his well-being diminished quickly. Also, when it was mentioned Izuku is going to be alright, some of the classmates had a negative reaction. And when Nezu introduced Toga as the new student, all of them had a sudden outburst of straight-up denial. She's the new student. Most of the students exclaimed, words to describe this scenario were stuck in their mouths. But, that can't be. She's a villain. Our favorite character Uraraka stood up from her seat in disbelief, and stated her thoughts about Toga. It was a given, Himiko Toga has some bad blood with some, and if not all of the students in the classroom, especially Uraraka. Damn. Toga thought, their reactions were expected from her, but it still was a surprise. Who wouldn't get mad that training all your life so you could get enrolled to UA and some girl with a villain background just straight up got it, no questions asked by the teachers. I know what you're all thinking, but I can assure you that her villain days are over. She turned over a new leaf. Nezu tried to calm the class down, but it was futile. No matter how Nezu tried to analyze the students, most of them still saw Toga as a bloody villain. Well, this was to be expected. Izawa did say they'd disappoint him more and more every day. Nezu wondered. No matter what he did, he didn't see a way to convince them she's a better person. Nezu raised his eyebrows. There's a way for them to accept her, be it by force or not. Everyone has a second chance. He finally figured out the way to use his words, so they all would calm down. If all of you heroes in training can't seem to understand this simple crucial fact, then can any of you deserve to be in UA? Nezu added, his words laced with some sort of made-up anger, to make it more believable. I could expel all of you just because you don't have that sort of mindset. Most of the students in the tightly packed classroom didn't have the mindset of a hero, that's for sure. She's a villain, she doesn't deserve to be here. All she deserves is to be in prison. That's what most of them think. With a frail mindset like this, most never reach the top in the hero world. Well, unless you have a strong quirk. Either way, Nezu's remarks seemed to frighten most of the students. They definitely had something to say, but kept their mouths shut tightly. Especially Uraraka and Bakugo, what they did to Izuku was already expulsion-worthy in Izawa's eyes. Honestly, it's a miracle why he let them stay. So, any other questions? It seemed no one had any other question except for her being a villain, so the class was overwhelmed by silence for a few seconds, until someone had a decent question. Sir, how would Izuku react to this? Since you know. Kirishima had a good point. As of now, Nezu hadn't thought of this. Izuku and Toga being in the same room every day, there's bound to be a problem. Not as big as the author deleting the coffin comments, right? I'll take care of it. Nezu replied. He didn't need to talk about it with Izuku. If he meets her without no further notice, her life may be in danger. Just like that, Nezu left without saying another word, leaving Toga standing in front of the entire class. Sup guys? She tried to look friendly, but that clearly didn't work. They all glared at her intensively. Especially Momo. To Nijire. After getting the courage to meet Izuku face to face, thanks to Mirio, she was confident she would meet him on the same day. Clearly, they did, except one of them was unconscious. Seeing Izuku being rolled into the nurse's office on a bed, his body and teared-up clothes stained with blood, she couldn't believe it. She had no further knowledge about the new and improved Izuku. And that he's a Hanma and that they heal at an extraordinary rate. So, to the heroes that were guiding Izuku's unconscious and injured body, they all knew he was going to be okay. As for her point of view, it seemed as if Izuku was injured beyond repair. If anything, it looked like he's already dead. Nijire couldn't grasp the fact of Izuku dying, as for some reason. Her tears fell down her face almost instinctively. She did not wait. She rushed to the scene, her fear for Izuku's well-being went through the roof. With a quick peek from up close, it did seem to be far worse than she imagined. Instantly, she pleaded the heroes to take Izuku to a hospital. She demanded him to be taken to a hospital. She had no prior knowledge, completely in the dark of the fact that him being here is the safest route they could take. Obviously, the heroes were also the teachers of UA. And yes, they know Izuku and Nijire date, the gossip spread like wildfire. Well, dated. Calmly, the heroes explained everything there is to know, and that Izuku is in no harm. Even so, it was a lot to take in, or even believe. Izuku's body was a complete wreck, yet it's supposed to heal in a day. An entire day before he wakes up, it didn't matter. She built the courage to meet him, and so she will. So, she waited the entirety of the day, just sitting by his side and waiting for him to wake up. She skipped the remaining classes. Obviously, there would be some punishment, but most of the teachers got the picture and let her do what she wants. As hours passed, she could barely keep her eyes open. The extraordinary healing factor he had wasn't a joke, she saw his body heal itself from up close. That calmed her down, but it wasn't enough. As Nijire was already at her limit, she grabbed his hand, the same way they did before, and elegantly fell asleep. Yet again, many hours have passed, and she was still out, her bed resting on the side of the bed. And finally, something woke her up. She looked up, and saw the boy she was waiting for, looking straight at her with a seemingly blank expression. For some reason, it made her reminiscent of the first day they became a couple. And by that, it was the kiss out of nowhere. Knowing Izuku, that was definitely out of character, to kiss a girl out of the blue. Only a few times when they dated has Izuku showed this sort of unusual behavior that was definitely not his character. Although it was a bit strange for her, she didn't pay much attention to it. She passed it as a simple off day for Izuku. But it changed when she was shown the video of Izuku stealing the files. For a hero in training, she's exceptionally smart, always getting a good grade on every test, even without studying. And in a heartbeat, Nijire reminiscent of the unusual behaviors Izuku showed. Nijire thought she made the connection, but it was just simply idiotic. Those rare and weird behaviors, added with the Izuku in the video, albeit they weren't even the same, her eyes still widened, in thought she found out the truth. Izuku was acting, and those unusual moments is when he slipped out of character. Turns out that wasn't the case, not at all. Having cried herself to sleep, she still had enough juice for another. Class 1A. A few classes had gone by. Safe to say, they were uncomfortable. With Toga being around, the class's atmosphere differed. Everyone had a different opinion about Toga. Sure, some didn't mind her because Nezu decided to let her in. And obviously, most thought it was a foolish decision by Nezu to let a villain into the school. It doesn't matter if they hate it, they can't do anything about it. Or can they? Even if the new hero in training originated from villainy, which is Toga, it begs a question for someone. If a feud between Toga and his student happened, and the teachers didn't see it, which one would be at fault? Even if the feud wasn't caused by Toga. Who would the teachers side on? The girl whose family has funded UA for years? Or one who was a villain prior to enrolling into the school? Surely, Momo knew the answer quite clearly. Even better, most of the students don't seem to like her either. Welp. Toga exclaimed in a sad tone. She just had to be put in a classroom filled with peeps she has bad blood with. Fate is really wild. As the lunch break came, she decided to skip it and just stay put in the classroom, like most of them did. She was bored and slightly tired. She never knew classes seemed to last longer than they appear. Wanting rest, she put her head down on the desk, already wanting to go home. Hey, blood freak. The sentence rang in her ears. Albeit turning a new leaf, she still doesn't like being called names, especially ones related to her quirk. What did you say? She jolted her head up, her expression just seemed to radiate trouble. Who was it? It was Momo, the favorite character, just called her a blood freak. You heard me, you fucking freak. Momo didn't seem to stutter, even though they had an encounter months back. Basically, the fight was one-sided. Toga was winning the battle, but she had to retreat due to orders. What the hell did you do to get here? Momo demanded for an answer. Being called a freak ticked Toga off, but she knows how to play a fair game. Oh, wait. I remember you. I beat your ass in the forest a few months back. Toga stated cheerfully, as if it was a joy to remember. It was actually funny enough that they heard Kirishima chuckle behind them. Well, no, you didn't, you ran away in the end. Momo desperately tried to defend herself, but it was a futile attempt. Yeah, I ran away after I beat your ass to a pulp. Toga exclaimed happily, a big fat smile was resting on her face. Momo's plan backfired drastically. Her goal was to trigger Toga enough so she would attack. The testimonies of the students would have been in her favor, as many of them also disliked Toga. And what did I do to get here? Nothing, really. The heroes captured me, and Nezu gave me a second chance. That's the gist of it. That's all. Toga added. It was true, that was all there is to know. But knowing Momo a little better, she wasn't buying it. You honestly expect me to believe that? Momo took the offensive side. Sore losers always tend to think like they know everything. So no, I didn't expect you to believe me. Yet again, Toga replied somewhat cheerfully, her fang teeth were out for Momo to see. It was definitely Momo's defeat, and she did not like it one bit. Her plan was to provoke Toga so she would attack, and hopefully this would get her expelled, but now she has a change in plans. Toga triggered her. Being scolded by a villain in front of all of her classmates just does not sit well with her. It doesn't matter. Even if Momo was the first one who attacks, surely the teachers will be on her side, and hopefully most of the students. You fucking bitch. Momo snapped. It doesn't matter if the teachers know it was her who initiated it first. Her family funds this school. Surely, they can't do anything to her. Toga was ready right from the get-go. The glare Momo was giving her, she was definitely asking for trouble. And as the innocent girl Toga is, she gave her trouble. Take the eye. Momo plopped down onto the ground. The fight was already over before it even started. Everyone was completely bewildered. She just fell down out of nowhere. What the hell did Toga do? No one asked. It was Izuku. He finally reached his troublesome classmates. He heard everything play out behind the classroom door. Honestly, he would have no problem of knocking Toga out rather than Momo, but her feisty roasts made him rethink. Also, he promised Nezu not to hurt her unless she deserves it. Momo was the one who started it, and ended it like a sore loser. Izuku. Most of students uttered. They all saw the shape he was in, and barely over a day, he seems to be completely fine. But this didn't matter to him. He came here to meet Toga, and no one else. Hey Toga. Izuku uttered her name profoundly. In an instant, she knew who he was. The green hair, the freckles, there's no doubt about it. This was also to be expected. Her actions almost ruined his entire life, so Toga didn't have that sarcastic smile on her face anymore. Hey Toga. Izuku uttered her name profoundly. In an instant, she knew who he was. The green hair, the freckles, there's no doubt about it. This was also to be expected. Her actions almost ruined his entire life, so Toga didn't have that sarcastic smile on her face anymore. He's Izuku. Toga could only wonder if it's really him. Sure, the hair, freckles, it's definitely him, but everything else is completely a resemblance of a new person. The first time they had an encounter, it was in a way most wouldn't expect to happen. First time laying her eyes on Izuku, she already had figured him out. Albeit he was an innocent and easily flustered person, he would fight if needed to. And now, she has no red on him. He was completely unpredictable. What the hell did you do? A voice laced with anger was heard behind the newly arrived classmate. Its tone made it clear that the person didn't like Izuku's actions. And did Momo's plan before it even started. Izuku replied to Kaminari, showing no hint of guilt for knocking Momo out. Safe to say, he somewhat wanted to do this, it was quite pleasure-inducing. Plan? What plan? Kirishima was also interested, so were the others that haven't left the class for lunch break. Still, their worry for Momo's well-being was awfully high. It's kinda easy to figure it out. Izuku exclaimed, affixing his gaze onto the unconscious, and if not already dead Momo. Their plan was to provoke Toga and cause a fight. To be fair, it did seem to be true, Momo did call her a blood freak seemingly out of the blue. You're just spouting nonsense. Uraraka begged to differ. Toga was provoking her. She screamed, her anger was now boiling. Seeing her best friend get knocked out by her ex just doesn't sit right with her. Hell, she even wanted to attack. As of now, she only views Izuku the same way she did months ago, an overly innocent boy who doesn't have the guts to hit a girl, let alone her ex. Ironic, since Momo's on the ground, unconscious, caused by yours truly. Wasn't she doing the same thing? Izuku questioned Uraraka's short-term memory. She called her blood freak out nowhere, that's enough to know what she wanted to do. What's going on here? Their unneeded arguing was suddenly interrupted by one of the teachers. They all turned their heads swiftly behind, and noticed one of the teachers came into the class. It was Midnight. Why is one of your students on the floor? She exclaimed in worry as she noticed Momo lying on the ground. Izuku was the closest to her, so this did not look good. It's Izuku's fault, he did this to her. Uraraka stated, pointing her finger at Izuku with anger. It was actually lucky that a teacher came into the class. Midnight was just minding her own bussiness when she heard the commotion and ran in to see what it was about. But this is definitely a weird scenario. The person in question is Izuku, the ex-accused traitor. Izuku, care to explain? Midnight asked politely. She wants to fix everything normally, to hear both sides of the story. Not really. Stated Izuku. All I'll say is I did the right thing. He had enough of this. The entire class just seems to make him angrier after each strange occurrence. Better yet, he decides to go straight home. He needs to become stronger, and fast. Classes aren't that helping with the road to strength. He left the class, in fact, he left UA. Sure, Izuku's rate of growth is astounding, but he's not certain if it's mesmerizing to Hanma or his brother Baki. Although his strength far exceeds all but one of the top heroes, there are people far stronger than him. Back then, the only person Izuku would think is worthy of the title strongest person would be All Might. But now, it's just straight up funny to hear someone say it. Having placed himself into a new life, he realized that the rankings are entirely different. Yeah, most put All Might at the top, yet in reality, by what Izuku has seen or heard, All Might isn't even in the top 5. That's only based by his knowledge or information from others. Who knows? Maybe All Might isn't even in the top 10. But then at the same time, Izuku is also not in the top 10. But that's nothing to worry about. With time, Izuku knows he's going to surpass All Might. It's meant to happen after all. As he reached his house, or mansion to be exact, he decided to train the majority of the day. Such a headache. Midnight scratched her head. Wuna seems to be the sole cause of the school's problems. Whatever, I'm willing to overlook this. She stated, some of students felt a sense of relief, but not all of them. But I do have questions about what happened in USJ. The moment the heroes arrived to the scene, thanks to Iida for informing them, there was already a bundle of questions. Sure, Iida informed them that dozens of Nomas attacked the place, but they didn't expect to see over 100. And that's just the entrance. Over 100 were present near the exit, all devoid of life, 50 inside, and once again over 100 down below. The absurd amount of them didn't matter to most of the heroes. The real question was how are they still alive? How did all of you defeat the Nomas? There were over 300 of them. We actually defeated only like 50 of them. Kirishima answered politely. This did clear something. Midnight clearly understands that these students aren't capable of defeating that many of them. The Nomas that were down the staircase probably got defeated by Aizawa and Izuku. But I'm not sure about the ones behind the entrance gate. This raised suspicions of a third party. Midnight had no clue what to make of this. Hey, it was probably that dude with the red hair. Kaminari stated. All of them remembered that man in a heartbeat. An unknown individual came into USJ. Midnight has knowledge of the accident Baki had caused months ago. For a moment, she believed it was him, but it was quickly brushed off. Baki seemed to visit quite often prior to the incidents, so the students should have recognized if it was him. Nevertheless, all of the students still in the class nodded. Apart from his red hair, how did he look like? They all knew the perfect word to describe that monster, but none of them seemed to have the guts to say it. He looked like the devil. Shoto broke the overwhelming silence. Everyone thanked him in their minds for saying it. What do you mean he looked like the devil? Well, none of us could move a muscle when he was around, even the Nomas couldn't look away from him. The only thing that popped up in Midnight's head was the use of the quirk, and probably the individual's quirk. Still, the quirk that forces everyone to freeze and make them think the user is a monster. Midnight couldn't be more wrong. As hours had gone by, Izuku has not stopped in his training. In fact, he hasn't even taken a single break yet. The training, of course, was not normal. At least to what most would consider normal. Any normal man would be left with a mental scar for the rest of their life, if they even tried something similar to what Izuku has been doing. Even when his body is aching to a point it feels like it's about to break, he's still not stopping. Suddenly, Baki intruded into the training room. I see you're still training. Baki exclaimed. Izuku didn't notice him walking in, he's like a fucking ninja. Although it did not surprise Izuku. Yeah. He casually replied while not even glancing at his brother, still training to the utmost limit his Hanma body could endure. Baki could tell Izuku had a lot on his mind, that frustrated face says it all. Clearly, the USJ incident left a big mark on the boy. Are you really that desperate on becoming stronger? I am. Aizu replied without missing a beat. His entire concentration seemed to be solely on finishing his training. To say, Baki was proud as a brother. That tenacity of Izuku is what makes for a good fighter. Want me to teach you a move? It was a simple question, yet that question seemed to change the entirety of Izuku's mood. Baki did train Izuku for the past months, but didn't really teach him any moves. Or at least good ones to use. It instantly brought Izuku back from that deep concentration of his. No matter what, he can't say no to this. I take that as a yes. Given Izuku's reaction, the answer was dead clear. Be on guard. Baki warned. Is he going to show the move on him? That's concerning. Izuku has never defeated Baki, or ever gotten close to grasping victory. With that in mind, he's going to use a move on him. Oh hell no. Izuku thought, a bit worried about what's to come next. But it's not like it'll help. Even better news to hear. Why guard if it's not going to change anything? Or maybe it's to show how effective and unstoppable it is even if the person is on guard. Izuku did just that, he put up his guard. For safety, he completely disregarded offense and solely concentrated on defense. At the same time, Izuku had no clue what to make of the sight. Baki looked relaxed, way too relaxed. Even so, it made Izuku way more cautious of what's to come. And now, he was downright confused. In a split second, Baki fell down. That's what happened, he was falling down. Little by little, Baki was getting closer to the ground. You see, Baki was inches away from touching the ground with his head. It's peculiar, that was the last sight Izuku saw before everything went black. If any one of you know what Baki just used, I'll shout out the first person who knows in the next chapter. What the hell was that move? Hours had gone past, and Izuku thought it would best to take a walk through the city to clear his mind. It was a devastating move, he didn't even see his own brother move from his spot, yet he got knocked out seemingly in an instant. And why the hell did he have to use it on me? Baki explained everything afterwards. Clearly, it wasn't a move Izuku could just learn in a day, and using it in a fight is another thing entirely. Nevertheless, learning a move of such caliber is a must for Izuku. If his goal is to become stronger, that move has to be learned, no matter how hard it is. Whatever, let's just go get some ice cream. He pondered on which flavor to buy. Obviously, he's got the looks, most of the girls he passed couldn't look away. He paid no mind to it, ice cream was on his mind. Bump. Something bumped into the side of his leg. It was definitely a person, a small person, given it only was as tall as Izuku's leg. Sorry. He heard a very weak and faint voice coming from the person in question. Izuku looked down and saw a small girl with white hair fallen on the ground, presumably because she bumped into his leg. Obviously, he wouldn't pay mind to any of it, but this was a bit different. Her arms and legs were bandaged up for some reason, and a single rag of clothing was covering her up. No matter what, this wasn't normal. By the position, it seemed she ran away from the alleyway right behind her. Are you alright? Izuku asked calmly. With just a glance, he could tell she was shivering for some reason. It may be due to the cold, but it's hot outside, so that's a no. You see, she wanted to reply, but someone beat her to it. Eri, I told you not to run around. In a heartbeat, Izuku saw the shivers run through the girl's spine. Just the voice of that man seemed to affect her this much. Through the alley, Izu saw the man come out from the unlit corners. The plague doctor mask and his gloves were the unusual things Izuku noticed about him. That's it, he didn't really feel anything special coming from him. I'm deeply sorry if my daughter caused you trouble. The man seemed to be really polite, but Eri's actions told otherwise. Eri, let's go. The man said, or maybe even demanded. Eri couldn't move from her spot, probably due to fear. Is he your father? Izuku asked the girl. Clearly, the scene he was in is a peculiar one. Why yes. Eri managed to stammer it out. She sounded so uncertain, so Izuku made the bigger picture. Eri, I said let's go. The man uttered in a colder tone. In the same moment, he started taking off his gloves. The actions of the man in the mask seemed to persuade Eri to come back. But she didn't make it far. Izuku grabbed her hand, surprising both Eri and the man in the mask. Eri, tell me the truth, without that fear in your way. Is he your father? At the same time, Izuku didn't take his eyes off the man in the mask. To be fair, this wasn't the first person that tried to help her. In the end, they all died by his hands, brutally even. It was to show that escape is not possible. This sack was basically drilled into her small head. But this was different. Something was telling her that the green-haired boy could protect her. And no. Once again, Eri stammered. But her reply was filled with honesty. Izuku got the info he needed. Heck, this even surprised Overhaul. He thought she'd have learned her lesson by now. Does she really want to see another person get tortured to death? I see. The man replied, slowly taking his gloves off. Stay behind me. Izuku told her, for safety reasons. Obviously, she complied. Eri, you just dug his own grave. Overhaul finally decided enough is enough. When will she understand that escape is not possible? This will be the last time. He already decided on the best way to break the boy and Eri at the same time. Bam. Izuku was right, there was nothing special coming from him, no aura whatsoever. Just a simple kick to the face and Overhaul already lost. The kick had beyond normal power behind it, almost caving the mask right into Overhaul's body. Fucking creep. He was no longer responding. The kick was strong enough to send his mask off flying into the distance. Heck, even his teeth were sent flying. To say Eri was horrified from seeing the blood get scattered all around the alley was not true. Sure, she couldn't believe it, but she wasn't frightened. Overhaul, the man that always killed everyone that tried to help her, just lost. She is now free. So, you like ice cream? Izuku hadn't thought this through. He just killed a man in front of a small girl. Let alone, it was gruesome. Overhaul's teeth were scattered all over the alleyway. But she wasn't horrified, just surprised at what just happened. Overhaul, the man that always one-sidedly massacred his enemies, was now defeated. Still, to her eyes, Overhaul deserved it. Ice cream, she had no clue what that is, but it sounded delicious, so she nodded to his question. Alright, let's go get some. They got ice cream. Eri had no clue what it was, so Izuku bought her vanilla-flavored ones. They were walking to the direction of Kukuru Mountain. Honestly, she needs a place to stay, and there's no better place than a mansion. At the same time, other civilians just couldn't look away. A small girl with bandaged arms and legs, not to mention she only had a single layer of clothing, if you could even call that clothing. Next to her was Izuku. Most thought he was her father, or at least they are blood-related. How could he treat her like this? I feel bad for her. The rambling of the passerby civilians could be heard. Obviously, Izuku didn't pay mind to it, but it was another story to Eri. She was always secluded from others. The only other people she saw was Overhaul and some of his lackeys. Eri was a bit overwhelmed, and the negative comments just made it worse. Excuse me, is she your daughter? A fellow passerby interrupted Izuku. She wasn't capable of getting her eyes away from Eri due to her clothes. No, she isn't. Then is she your sister? We're not related. Izuku's replies just made the passerby feel pity for Eri. I think she was misinterpreting something. Then who are you to her? He always hates people like her, ones who don't mind their own damn bussiness. I'm her guardian. He doesn't have any intention to speak with this woman anymore, as he doubts they would reach a conclusion, so he continued walking. Eri followed ahead. Izuku did notice she was acting a bit different than usual. It's like she was clinging to him, looking for safety. It wasn't the fear of someone taking her back to what hellhole she lived her entire life, but it was the anxiety of being in the presence of so many people. Are you alright? With her anxiety in mind, he tried to make Eri feel at ease. Getting her trail of thought out of the people around to something else usually helps. Why yes, I am fine. She stammered out. You don't have to worry, you know. We'll soon reach a place where there's nobody around. It surprised Eri. Not because of the fact she'll soon be away from all these civilians, but by the fact he knew why she's acting like this. Nevertheless, she was happy about it. They finally arrived at the residence of the mountain. Gently, Izuku placed his hands onto the metal gate. For her age, Eri knew what Izuku was trying to do. And although he was her savior, she had doubts he could. The metal gate looks to weigh in the tons, there's no way H. And he opened it. A bit dumbfounded, she ventured inside. Being locked up in a single room almost all her life, she has never seen the full glory of nature. It was such a beautiful sight, making all of that anxiety seemingly disappear. The mansion is up ahead. Mansion? She had no clue what that is. It's a house, a big house. And now she immediately understood. They followed the path to the mansion, Eri's eyes still glued to the scenery of the forest. Upon reaching it, they went inside, immediately to be greeted by Baki. Izuku, who's behind you? He could see a little girl hiding behind his brother's leg. I can explain. A certain someone opened his eyes, a bit dazed off from what had just occurred. The moment he did, pain seemed to hit his entire head. Overhaul. Please don't move. Overhaul was thrashing intensively. He could feel the absolute pain in his jaw. Heck, his jaw was bent in the opposite direction, not to mention he barely had any teeth left. He quickly touched his face, and in a heartbeat he was now completely fine. Sir? Where's Eri? One of the lackeys asked. He instantly remembered what happened. Damn it. Overhaul screamed at the top of his lungs. That fucking bastard. Although it was instantaneous, he remembered it very clearly. Eri was making yet another mistake, and he wanted to teach her a lesson that escape is not possible. That green-haired boy looked to be young, presumably still going to school. It didn't matter, Eri needed to learn the harsh truth: if she seeks help from anybody, they'll die a painful death. That was the plan. But it backfired, and almost cost Overhaul's life. I guess Izuku had the decency not to decimate an already broken corpse on the ground. This might be why he survived. But it seems Overhaul doesn't care how strong his opponent is. After all, he has quirk-destroying bullets. Although some only erase a quirk for a few hours, days, or even weeks, he has a few that completely removes a quirk from someone's body. He just needs to hit Izuku once with one of those bullets, and then Overhaul can do anything he desires to return the favor. Overhaul's top priority is to get Eri back in his hands. Without her, he wouldn't be able to produce quirk-destroying bullets any longer. Sir? Where's Eri? The same lackey repeated the question. Someone stole her from me. All the people in the room seemingly gasped in shock. Tell everyone to go out and look for her. If you see anyone with green hair, report it to me. Although Overhaul's pride has taken a beating, he acknowledged Izuku as an individual he cannot beat with his own quirk, so relying with his quirk-destroying bullets is necessary. So that's how it is. Baki seemed to understand the situation. What was that man doing to you? He asked Eri. Seeing the bandages, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a good reply. He was always experimenting on me. She could vividly remember the pain she always felt. Why is that? Because of my quirk. I heard him say that my blood can erase quirks. Baki remembered hearing on the news that a hero was shot by some sort of bullet and seemed to lose his quirk for a while. He's not interested in quirks because it's worldwide knowledge that any could exist. Still, a quirk that can make a user's blood capable of erasing quirks. It's a powerful quirk indeed, and it seemed to fall into the wrong hands. Eri, do you know where your parents are? Right after the question was asked, Eri tilted her head down. Clearly, both of the Hanmas knew as to why. My parents are dead. The vibe in the room changed drastically. That question shouldn't have been asked. I see, sorry I asked. Baki immediately apologized. She has nowhere to go, and what worries Baki is what would happen if the government got a wind of such a quirk. Without a doubt, they would make her elaborate. So, what do you think? Can she stay with us? Baki is the lord of the mansion, so it's his decision. Of course she can. Given on what her quirk can do, this place might be the safest in the world. So it was decided, Eri can stay. At the same time, she was at a loss for words. The two people met not too long ago actually decided to let her stay, away from Overhaul and the others. It seems she's not good at controlling her emotions. Tears came falling down from her face. Welcome to the family. After picking a room specifically for Eri, which took a while because the mansion has a decent amount of rooms, Izuku decided to go train once again. It was getting late, yet he trained for a good 4 hours. As another day came, he woke up early. Obviously, it was to train. His goal was to do some light training before going to school. But turns out that light training turned into harsh training, a habit of his. Doesn't matter, his body heals way too fast than normal anyways. As always, he ate after. Eri was perplexed at the amount of portions both the Hanmas were eating, so she tried to do the same. After that, he went straight to school. He had to thank Baki. Eri was brought to the mansion by Izuku, and decided to take responsibility of her, but Baki seems to help a bunch. Also, Izuku had the same thoughts as his brother. If the capabilities of what her quirk can do came out to the public, who knows what could happen. He got those thoughts out of his head. Thoughts like that aren't needed. She's protected by one of the strongest people in the world after all. As he was near enough the school where he could see the entrance gate, he saw a familiar face. A face that was anger-inducing. It was All Might, of all people. He was definitely waiting for someone, and that someone was without a doubt Izuku. This fucker. He uttered beneath his breath, now reaching the school gate. Morning. Young Midoriya. Can you please shut the fuck up? To be fair, it feels like his day is already ruined. I don't want your quirk, so politely fuck off. Although the negative comments is something All Might didn't expect, he was ready for them. All he thought was Izuku being stubborn. Maybe he is, that's what he thinks. He's definitely not. Please, young Midoriya, take my quirk. All Might has actually become so desperate that he started taking about his quirk in public, although there's no one around. I said no, and get out of my life. All Might has now started to suspect that he indeed doesn't want his quirk. You're one of the best successors One for All could ever have. Don't you want to become stronger? Izuku didn't say anything and just went inside the school building. As of now, All Might had to shut his mouth. Students were all around after all. Reaching his class, everyone noticed his presence. After all, he's got that aura around him. Momo, in fact, she noticed him and couldn't look away. She gave him death glares, which made Izuku chuckle internally. The class was about to start, and to everyone's pleasant surprise, Aizawa was back in bussiness. Aizawa-sensei. We're all glad to see you're alright. Iida spoke for everyone. Yes, everyone was relieved to see him, even Izuku. Aizawa did risk his life after all, that earned the respect needed. Yeah. Aizawa responded, wanting to go back to his bag and sleep. Summer is near, and as you probably don't know, we always have a tournament between the first, second and third years at the end of the school year. They all cheered happily. A tournament is a great way to get recognition, even before becoming an actual hero. So, a week from now, the tournament is going to be held. Start training, cause all of you are going to need it. It's funny. All of the students thought Aizawa meant the third years, that's why he said to start training. Actually, not even close. You all know who he was actually referring to. The fire and determination Izuku saw in everyone's eyes, except Hagaku's, it was laughable. Definitely, all of the students will try their best to reach second place. Start training, because the third and second years are strong. That's not what Aizawa had said, that's the way they all interpreted it. And funny enough, that's not what Aizawa wanted to say. Start training, because Izuku is also participating. That's what he meant. Seeing his strength from up close, annihilating the Nomus as if they were children, Izuku might as well be on par with All Might. No, maybe he has passed All Might already. The super strong Nomu, Hawk, was without a doubt stronger than the symbol of peace. And realizing that Aizawa has lived to see yet another day, it must mean Izuku defeated him, somehow. It was only a matter of time before villains appeared, villain on par with the best of the best heroes. And at the same time, oncoming heroes with strength on par and if not stronger than the rest would also come. Given what Izuku had to go through, to Aizawa, it's a miracle he hasn't turned to villainy. Hell yeah. The entire class cheered. To those who don't like expressing themselves in an extrovert way stayed silent, but even they were excited. As for Izuku, he did stay silent, but at the same time, he wasn't excited. Maybe the old Izuku would have felt something in this scenario, probably because he wasn't that strong. It doesn't matter what the event is going to be, the chances for Izuku losing is basically zero. And after today, there won't be any classes, only after the event. Just like in the sports festival, it's a chance to show your prowess to the heroes. And once it's over, you might have a chance to work under a hero for the summer. Basically, you work as a sidekick. But since it's going to be summer, it will be different than before. This time, if you get recommended by a hero after the event, you will have a choice to refuse. Last time, after the sports festival, if there was a hero that was interested in someone and wanted him to become his sidekick, you had to accept. If someone had multiple recommendations, then he had to choose. Since it's summer, a student will have a choice to either work for a hero, or have some time to rest. UA is strict, but not that strict. Well, they're definitely not strict on Izuku, he's still not wearing his school uniform, although a new one was made already. Still, a week off from school just to train, it's not really needed for Izuku. It's not needed for the event, that is. Recently, Izuku has increased his training intensity, but he feels like it's not enough. Even now, Hawk is still probably stronger than him. Not to mention, he must have gotten upgrades, presumably healing quirks and even more strength enhancers. Still, for an entire week, he'll get 6 more hours of free time. So, 6 more hours to train. It's going to be painful. So, what do we do during the event? The usual. Class 1 wasn't the only class informed, every class was. As for the third years, it wasn't really needed. They knew this would occur the moment they became third years. The event is always the same. Yeah, we team up, get everyone out, and fight for first place. It's a simple free-for-all between all the classes. Teaming is also allowed, but at the same time, there can only be one winner. Everyone actually has the same plan, to team up with someone, or to form a group. Although it's a free-for-all, even your classmates are enemies, unless you team up. Being a lone wolf is considered a bad idea, since everyone around you is basically an enemy. And at the same time, everyone views a lone wolf as an easy prey to get rid of, so one less student to worry about. But with a team, you're more likely to make it to the end. At the same time, most don't really care about first place, all they care is about impressions. Making to the top 20, or even 50, heroes will definitely notice, so it gives a higher chance to get recognized. That's usually the purpose of the event. UA has noticed most of the students become sluggish after summer is over, even becoming weaker. In essence, most of them do nothing for 3 months. No problems, right? Mirio asked his 2 friends, Nichiro and Tamaki. So do we take the defensive like last year? I'd rather we take the offensive this time around. I doubt the others would attack us. Known as the Big Three, no one would dare to attack them. And as the rumor of Mirio defeating the entire class 1 on his own exists, taking the defensive will make it less fun. If so, who do we attack first? A thought crossed Nijire's mind. Although it's an event for fun, she doesn't want to attack Class 1A, mainly because of Izuku. But at the same time, having seen the new him, and the hard muscles of his body, she started believing Izuku has surpassed Mirio. Oh boy. We attack the other third years. They always attack the weaker ones, the first and probably the second years. They think we'll do the same, so let's surprise them. Although they were discussing their plans in the cafeteria with others near their table, which was a bad idea, no one could hear them due to the others talking as well. At the same time, they felt a sense of regret. If all the shit with Izuku hadn't happened, they would have asked him to team up. Now, if they did, the answer is obvious. Nijire, have you met Izuku already? Mirio asked, a bit worried if she's trying to prolong the inevitable. Yeah, I have. She replied a bit happily. It went better than I expected, so I'm happy about that. Both Mirio and Tamaki were happy about that as well. They still had one single question lingering in their heads, a question they were a bit afraid to ask. Do you think there's still a chance? It was a bit out of context, but Nijire knew what Tamaki wanted to say. I hope so. Although an unnerving reply, she was cheerful. Both of the boys hoped for the best. The school day came to an end. With a week off from school, everyone had the same idea, to start training. As for those who have already been training even after school, they decided to increase the intensity. But it's a shame, with their increased efforts to become stronger, their routine is equivalent to Izuku's warm-up routine. No one had a clue about that. I should visit my mother. He'll have no free time to call her, or visit her during the week. It went well. He told her everything that she needed to know, about Iuri, about the event and that. Izawa also told that because of the event being a way to impress heroes, the only one who can attend and watch are heroes. Or unless you're rich, then you can attend. Yue is a sly bastard. Sure, Baki is rich, but at the same time, Izuku had no clue how wealthy he is. Owning an entire mountain as his property, he's sure Baki's a multi-billionaire. On how he got that money is a mystery. He proposed that Baki could pay the price and let her attend and watch, but she decided it's not needed, she'll watch it on TV. At the same time, she knew Izuku is going to win. It's not blind confidence or cockiness of her child, he's a Hanma, that's all that needs to be said. Although she told Izuku to not inflict physical damage to the other contestants, or at least keep it to a minimum. Inko being his mother, Izuku agreed to her demand. Other mothers or fathers watching wouldn't want to see their children getting beaten up like ragdolls. Having stayed at her house long enough, he left. As of now, the entirety of Izuku's schedule for the week is simply consisting of training. As the summer's event is near, Overhaul's planning is also coming into play. Although Iuri is out of his grasp, he still had some of her blood saved up. And at the same time, he already has a decent quantity of quirk-destroying bullets. His lackeys are out searching for the green-haired boy and Iuri, just as they are told. As for Overhaul, with the amount of blood he had saved up, he started making more bullets. More precisely, the perfect bullets. Not the ones which nullify a quirk for a week, or a month or two, but ones which basically destroy said quirks. As a man that he is very dedicated into his work. Although the anger and humiliation he experienced is still lingering inside, his work seems to somewhat calm him down. Even now, he perfectly remembers Izuku's face. The need for revenge is eye-catching. He is proud of his creation. A single hit from those bullets immediately makes any hero defenseless, helpless. The joy in breaking those cocky, overconfident heroes with a single shot from a gun is exciting. Well, Overhaul's the same. To be fair, as much as he wanted to, he didn't believe his lackeys would find anything. Excuse me, Sir Overhaul, I think we found him. But somehow they did. He found it hard to believe. Is this the man you were talking about? The lackey that came in showed a picture of a certain green-haired boy. Overhaul didn't have that much trust in his lackeys, but now he does. Only a little though. We caught this today. He could see the boy standing near the entrance of Kukuru Mountain. What I couldn't believe is that he opened that metal gate with his own hands. The lackey sounded perplexed, still in doubt if he saw it correctly. As for Overhaul, he definitely believed it. This boy knocked him out, or almost knocked him dead. With the speed in a league where he couldn't see Izuku move, and now the strength to open a metal gate looking to weigh in the tons, he now has a clue on what his quirk might be. So his quirk might be a body enhancer. At first, Overhaul's first thought was a speed enhancer, but this might as well change everything. Even if it is a body enhancer, bullets should still be capable of penetrating his skin. That's all he needs. If a bullet just digs in less than a centimeter into the body, the bullet's properties should still take in effect. Even so, he was perplexed at the fact he entered Kukuru Mountain. Is he the anonymous owner? He asked the lackey, who was shivering a bit. I have no idea. But we also caught this. The lackey showed him even more photos. As Overhaul digged through all of the photos one by one, he couldn't help but muster up a psychotic smile. You overdid it. Nice work. Working for Overhaul for more than 2 years now, this was the first time he ever got congratulated. No, maybe he's the only one to ever get congratulated. A sense of pride has risen up to the lackey. Heck, he feels like he'd get a promotion soon. This is perfect. The photos at hand basically changed everything. In the mansion. I think that's enough for today. 6 days have already passed. Training non-stop, Izuku was now on the ground, trying his hardest to get a single breath of air. Alright. With the assistance of Baki, the training intensity had increased once again. Saying the training was brutal could be considered sugarcoating. Once Izuku would think he had reached his limit, Baki would intrude and force him to train till he physically couldn't. Every day, Baki would leave his brother basically on the verge of death. To a point where his muscles couldn't even function properly, Izuku would just lie on the ground before he could move again. It was definitely rough. He had thoughts of lowering the intensity, but his mind refused to do such a cowardly tactic. Tomorrow's the day of the event. Excitement wasn't really what Izuku was feeling. It was pain. Baki was definitely glad Izuku started going to such lengths to achieve strength that it started reminding of himself. All the effort he put into it, in end, it was a success. Still, there was one off-putting thing about his younger brother. It somewhat reminds him of a certain relative. Are you okay? Eri has been worrying too much for the past days. But it's understandable, Izuku is definitely in pain, but it was caused by his own demand. This still didn't really put much comfort in her heart. I should be asking you. He replied, smirking. Seeing the two males training like their lives depended every single day, she tried to do the same. Her muscles still ache to this day. I'm fine. Eri barely stammered it out. Don't worry, I'll be fine in a few minutes. A few minutes until his body regains its functions properly. It may not be a lot, but to the individual who has to endure it, it'll feel like hours. Nevertheless, it reduced the stress in Eri. A pat on the head from Baki made it even better. Izuku got better, finally capable of getting up. This basically happens on a day-to-day basis, so he somewhat got used to it. It was time for a feast. His hunger had no bounds after a harsh day of training like a beast. He could already smell the aroma of the food from the training room. He left the room, only to be greeted by the delicious food already awaiting to be devoured on the table. But it's weird. It hasn't even been 10 minutes yet Baki had time to make this. Well, it's not like he wanted an answer, food is food. Now that he thought about it, Baki was nowhere in sight. Eri, where's Baki? He somewhat shouted so Eri could hear it. He said he had to go somewhere. It was definitely strange. Not once has he seen Baki leave his mansion ever since he was rescued from prison. For a while, Baki gave off an impression that he is a shut-in. Not like it matters if he is one or not, he's still his brother he respects. As of courtesy, he waited for his brother to come back and enjoy the delicious food he made together, like eating with family. Eri fit in with the Hanmas without any struggles. Although she can't do seemingly normal impossible thing their bloodline can, she can already be considered as family. He wasn't coming back, they've been waiting for over 15 minutes. This made Izuku understand that his brother had actually left the area. Usually, he just takes a walk around his establishment, but it didn't make sense to do it right after making dinner. Eri, let's dig in, I think Baki won't make it for dinner. Now that he thought about it, Baki is a billionaire, without a doubt. Never leaving his mansion, and never seeing him do any related work apart from training, he doesn't realize how the question never popped up in his head. For a single man to have this much money, yet never seeing him work, it's a mystery. I'm thinking too much. Baki is his brother, so he doesn't want to meddle with his bussiness. In a very tightly packed room, a certain man was sorting out some papers. And, I'm done for today. The man sighs, today was a hard day, even for him. Man, I'm tired. It was Biscuit Oliva, the warden of Tartarus. With his work here done for today, he oughted to leave. He wanted to finally relax and take a break, but it just had to be interrupted. Excuse me, Sir Oliva, it seems that someone is near the entrance of Tartarus. And is that supposed to be a problem? A single person standing near the entrance isn't something you'd need to report to me. Sir, you see, it's the same person who broke into the prison, the one with red hair. Well, no doubt in Oliva's mind, it was Baki. It's been months since he last saw him. Let him in and escort him to me. Remembering what happened last time, Oliva does not want his men to be half dead on the ground once again. Still, is there a reason why would Baki visit Tartarus seemingly out of nowhere? Baki and Oliva are friends, to say, but they rarely hang out, even if they have time. A few minutes later, he was escorted into Oliva's workroom. For Baki to visit, there had to be an actual reason, but Oliva couldn't put his finger on it. Due to the atmosphere in the room, the guards knew this was something they could not listen to or intrude, so they all left the room. Hey, long time no see, I guess. It's been over 5 months, although it's not that long, they rarely interact with each other anyway. Hey. Baki replied with a simple hey. You haven't changed a bit. Is there a reason you came here to my workplace this late and didn't wait for tomorrow? Yeah. Simple one-word replies. As much as Oliva respects Baki's strength, he dislikes this side of him. By the way, how's Izuku doing? Hope you haven't made him a calamity such as yourself. Oliva's a simple man, with no special bloodline. Although his strength far exceeds the realm of possibility, a Hanma could defeat him any day. That's the reason why I'm here. Raising an eyebrow, Oliva realized something must have occurred with the boy. What happened? Nothing, really. I just noticed something about him in the past days. Notice what? That he's changing or something. Every time I look at him, he now reminds me of Yuichiro. Oliva almost spat out the coffee he was drinking. Yuichiro's father, right? It's been a while since he heard that name, probably because that man is already dead. Yeah. You know a lot about the Hanma bloodline, right? More or less. Then, you should know what made him special. He was capable of doing something no other Hanma ever could, even Yuichiro. So, now that your brother started reminding you of Yuichiro, you think he has the same factor as him. I'm not sure, it's just a feeling. Still, why does it matter? Better yet, is there a reason why you told me? I don't really like meddling with the Hanmas, you know that. There's none, I just wanted to leave the house, I barely go out anyway. What, are you a shut-in or something? I guess, there's not much for me to do anymore. What do you mean by that? I don't have a reason to seek for more strength anymore. Oliva really didn't expect such a serious talk, it's already night for fuck's sakes. Even the fact that Izuku could be another special Hanma like Ichiro, this didn't matter now. For Baki to lose his reason to seek strength, it's perplexing. Wait, just hang on a second. What do you mean you have no reason? Baki is another breed, literally. His dedication for strength immediately puts respect into anyone who gets to witness his drive. In a way, what made him to be Baki is entirely his drive for strength. Oliva doesn't meddle with the Hanmas, but he feels like he has to. Of course you do. Your sole reason for seeking strength is that you could defeat your father, right? Just because it seems like an impossible goal, you never showed a hint of giving up, so what's going on? The light is thin, barely existent, that's how everyone would view Baki's chances of surpassing his father. But, if they had a chance to witness Baki's work ethic, they'd start to question on why the light is so thin. Don't tell me you got lazy. Although Oliva simply asked, the anger was clearly heard in his voice. Heck, hearing Baki spout such nonsense, Oliva was unconsciously applying more grip strength on his cup than usual, to a point where it cracked. I didn't get lazy, it's just. Baki wasn't angry, since without much context, it's no surprise why Oliva is reacting like this. It's just what? Oliva lost it, he broke the cup. All the hot coffee splashed all over his clothes. He didn't show an ounce of care for his clothes, all that mattered to him is hearing Baki's response. But at the same time, he didn't really expect a decent answer. It's just that I already defeated him, about a year ago. All the broken shards in Oliva's hand were turned to dust when he heard it. To say you could defeat Yujiro is already taboo, to say you defeated him is basically a death sentence. At the same time, nobody would ever believe those words that come out from anyone's mouth. But if it's Baki, there would be doubt, but at the same time, no one would dare say it's a lie to his face. What happened? Oliva wanted to know. Was Baki joking? Oliva highly doubts it. Baki just said that nonchalantly. Oliva, who just had a day full of surprises, managed to calm down. You're not joking. I'm not. Then, what about his title? I let him keep it, I don't really care about a measly title. Now, it was starting to make sense. Baki had set up a goal for himself, and that was to defeat his father. It sounds impossible, so that's why Baki didn't show care about anything else. Apart from family, he didn't really care about anything else. Having achieved the goal, there's nothing else he wants to do. He was obsessed with becoming stronger just so he could defeat Yujiro. Everything else is meaningless now. I see. Oliva managed to compose himself through all of it. I get it, you defeated him and now have no reason on becoming stronger. Oliva exclaimed, still not finished. That's still no excuse to stop training, is it? Start relaxing a bit too much, and you lose the next fight. Baki got the point across. You know, I wanted to put my father in his place for what he did to my mother, but once I defeated him, he was happy. Knowing Yujiro as friend, Oliva understood why. All Yujiro wants is a challenge, or an individual stronger than himself, that's all he cares about. And when I thought about it, how could it have been a surprise? I basically gave him what he wanted, a challenge. Does Izuku know? He doesn't, and I'd like to keep it that way. Oliva needlessly agreed to keep it a secret. He doubts they would meet again. Alright, thanks to you I have to go take a fucking bath. The coffee was splattered all over his clothes. Sorry. 7 days later. Finally, the yearly UA school festival was about to take place. With all of the students having already made their plans, they eagerly waited. After all, it's one of the best ways to show your prowess to the world and the heroes. Some of the contenders sometimes tend to take this way too seriously. This event usually grants fame even before becoming an actual hero, making it far easier to become wide known. Let's get this over with. Izuku was one of the few that barely had any joy in the matter. He still wants to become a hero, his way of course, but this is an event that makes a hero. Although if the hero committee saw a glimpse of his strength, they'd straight up make him one. So, with the delicious bacon and eggs that Baki made clouding his mind, he ventured to the school. Loads of buses were waiting near the school gate, it was almost time for the festival. If he's not wrong, there are 5 classes in total. Class 1A, 1B, 2B, 3A, 3B. From what I know, all of Class 2 was expelled. He has heard the rumor of Izawa expelling an entire class. What the hell did they do to Izawa? Izuku was displaying his thoughts out loud. Nevertheless, he made it to his class. Upon entering, he realized he was the last one to come. Although it was a bit early for classes to start, Izawa was already explaining everything to everyone. You finally made it. Izawa spoke without changing his dull tone, like always. Yeah, class still hasn't started, so don't blame me. Izuku simply responded. It's best to always show up early for everything, but since it's him, Izawa didn't mind. As I was explaining, although it is a simple free-for-all, it's best to play as a team. Izawa gave them a few tips to have a higher chance to make it to the top. But most of them already asked the seniors, so this was already common knowledge. First place doesn't matter, all that matters is to perform well for heroes to take notice. That's what everyone is already going for. With the big 3 existing, first place is already out the window. Also, do not be a lone wolf, everyone usually targets them right from the start. Everyone knew that as well. Even Shoto and Bakugo, who find it best to work alone, understood that they definitely need a team to survive. As much as some still can't get used to Toga's company, she was still invited into a certain team, more people the better. The clock finally struck at 8. Alright, everybody to the buses. Izawa informed. Every single class had left at the exact same time. As for those who do not go into the hero course, sadly, this was an event they could not participate in. Only the 5 existing hero classes had a chance to display themselves at the end of the school year. As all of the classes, the first, second and third years passed each other, they all glanced at the first years intensively. In a way, they were looking for prey. The goal of the festival was simply to make it to the top, and taking out the first years is the second easiest thing to do. Better yet, it was a way to throw them out of their game. It affected a few, but most kept their composure. Most of them had their eyes onto Izuku. A boy, with no school uniform on. Some do remember seeing him the first time a while back with no uniform, yet he's still not wearing it. Rules are harsh, and Izuku should have been expelled long ago for such behavior. As to why he has not raised many questions. What ticked them off the most was his demeanor. For a first year that's about to go fight his seniors, he looks way too relaxed. No way. Mirio and Tamaki were blown with disbelief, they finally noticed their ex-friend. Nijire did say he grew, but this is too much. Mirio pondered on the sudden change. Apart from his face and hair, there's barely any resemblance to the old Izuku, who was way too shy and timid for his own good. All of the students got on the buses specifically for their classes and went off. Due to the older kids giving them such a scare, it was a quiet ride for Class 1A. At the same time, no one knew what to talk about. I have to make sure, do all you have a team you can depend on? Izawa spoke up. Having teammates was basically considered as a necessity. Out of all of the students on the bus, only one raised a hand. Why am I not surprised? Everyone else glanced at the person who raised their hand up. Just be careful, they always go for people like you. Izawa informed. MHH. Izuku replied, not even caring a single glance at his teacher. Informing him wasn't needed, but since he was the one who raised his hand, Izawa had to say something. And so, they finally made it to the arena. Upon entering the insanely huge arena, the students were escorted into the locker rooms to put on their hero costumes. Divided due to genders, Mineta screamed internally. It was a big locker room, too big for comfort. Although a bit over 100 students are present, the locker room has way more lockers than needed. Just by changing their clothes, you could spot out the lone wolves. Others stayed close to their teammates, almost like a safety mechanism. Only a few could be considered lone wolves in this soon-to-go event. Once again, eyes swarmed over those very few. They had their circumstances, either they're so cocky that they think it's going to be a breeze by doing it alone, or others didn't accept them into any teams. Out of the blue, Izuku yawned. He was bored, even though it still hasn't started. It's basically one of those moments where you don't like it, you still have to do it. But it's not like Izuku didn't want to do it. He's basically neutral about it, there's some merit to him, but it's not going to be fun. The room was quite quiet, so the over-exaggerated yawn was heard all around the locker room. He's only a first year, yet he's taking this so lightly. That's what they were thinking. As they had their eyes glued onto him like prey, they were furious. Hell, some even wanted to confront him, give him a scare he would never forget, but all those thoughts disappeared once Izuku took off his shirt and sweater. In their eyes, he looked well built under those bright-colored clothes, but this is way beyond what they expected. How could a teen have this much muscle and be ripped at the same time? Not to mention the scars, some were now frightened by him. And some finally realized that they're not straight. Never mind that, a few minutes later, a feminine voice was heard all over the room. All students, please exit the locker rooms. They all obliged with no further questions. Outside of their rooms, 5 heroes were waiting. The homeroom teachers. Students, please follow your homeroom teachers to the stage. And so they did. Going through a corridor, to which in the distance they could see the ring in all its glory. It was a serious event, loads of heroes showed up to see how the UA students have improved. Upon coming out of the corridors, the first years were mesmerized at the sheer size of the arena. The moment they all came out, cheers were heard all over the UA arena. Excitement, thrill, all sorts of emotions were laced in their shouts. There they come. President Mix shouted, stirring up the crowd of heroes even more. Our entertainment of today. To be fair, most believe he could have phrased it better. Students fighting each other so the heroes would notice, maybe it is entertainment. As the overwhelming pressure of so many heroes watching them all at the same time affected even some of the seniors, they all fidgety walked up on the stage. Are you ready? The students, a bit stiff, replied with a weak yeah. Tough crowd. President Mix snickered. Over 100 students were present on this stage, yet there's a lot of room to spare. They were given 1 minute to prepare. An all-out fight will begin, so they all grouped up with their teammates. As they all looked, their worst fear had come true. Nijire, Mirio and Tamaki are on the same team. All of them tried to keep their distance away from them, so they wouldn't be the first to be attacked by the overpowered trio. In mere moments, the teams have been established. As they were grouped next to one another, everyone could once again clearly spot out the lone wolves. The loners were stiff, already on guard way before it was about to begin. Everyone is going for them first. Izuku. A feminine voice uttered his name right behind him. He didn't even turn around, he already knew who it was. If you want to, you could join us. Nijire asked politely. For a while, it was a tad bit quiet. The heroes weren't talking, and the students were discussing their plans silently, so her request to add Izuku on her team was heard by some. They couldn't believe it, what kind of luck was this? A third year asked a first year if he wanted to join their team, and the one who asked was Nijire, one of the big 3. A simple yes would already grant him a chance to make it to the end. No? He simply replied, denying her request. Everyone who heard were left dumbfounded, he just rejected to join the big 3. Most would lick a boot to join them, while some would go even further. Albeit Nijire was expecting this, she didn't know what to say next. Ah, alright. Then, good luck. She flashed a somewhat awkward smile. MHH. He murmured. Literally everyone was pissed at his calm demeanor. All around him are enemies, yet that bored look on his face still hadn't left. How dare he not look at her when she was speaking? The simps angrily thought. Truth be told, most still remembered that Izuku dated Nijire. This sparked unnecessary hate by the males of the school. After they broke up due to weird circumstances, most tried to shot their shot with her. All were denied without a single thought. Seeing Nijire being friendly with her ex, while he doesn't even bother to take a glance at her, sparked yet another series of unneeded hatred. Alright, time's up. Fight, fight, fight. And so the free-for-all began. Back at the mansion, Baki was training. The festival is being aired on television. He didn't really find a need to watch it, the winner is way too fucking obvious. After everything, he found no need to train anymore, but he still does it every single day. A big pond of sweat had formed right below Baki. At the same time, his legs felt like they were on fire, yet he wasn't even half done. Later, his concentration was interrupted. Eri bursted into the training room. Eri? What's wrong? Immediately, he saw that Eri was shivering non-stop, fear written all over her face. There's people outside. She barely managed to stammer it out. So someone broke in, huh? Baki talked to himself. They're the same people who tortured me. She began to cry relentlessly. Fear got the better of Eri. For her to realize that they're the same people who did this to her must mean that what they did was basically engraved into her little head. Don't worry, I'll deal with them, just stay in this room. He patted her head as he left the room. A trail of sweat was left in his wake. Baki doesn't like a dirty house, but he hates intruders even more. He could spot a few through the window trying to hide behind the trees nearby. They were amateurs, definitely. They were wearing plague masks, that's how Eri realized it was them. Seeing such a mask definitely brings back painful memories. You fucking dared to break into my property. Baki has decided to finish his training by fighting the intruders. Thus concludes today's chapter. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe with post notifications, so you'll be notified when the next chapter releases. Until next time.